And good evening and welcome to another episode of Life is People. And well, tonight this has been a conversation that's been a long and windy road to get to, but I'm really excited about tonight's conversation. So, well, without any further ado, let's just kick into it, man. How you doing, Eijah?
Great. Thank you for having me, guys.
That's no worries. Now, I mean, as many of you will probably read on this the review, or if you know it anyway, he just kind of got a very fascinating kind of sort of journey and a story to tell, and he's working on something that's, I think, is a big game changer, which we're all going to sort of get into, over the sort of part of this conversation. But I think the best place I kind of really want to sort of start with you, Eijah, is because. I'm fascinated really because it's obviously just reading that in your bio, it just says you're a programmer. Now let's just take this right back to the very beginning. Where did you learn programming? Because it's not so, it doesn't strike me as a subject you're going to learn at school. So when did your fascination with code and programming? How did you sort of develop that into obviously getting to a position where you eventually are now?
Right. Well, that's interesting because I started in a very non-traditional way. I did not get an undergraduate degree in computer science, which is surprising to a lot of people. In fact, my undergraduate degree was in Spanish. I'm fluent in Spanish. And it was, yeah, I've always tinkered with code as a child. My father's an electrical engineer and inspired me throughout my childhood. But I didn't really think I would ever do it as a career until college. And about halfway through my undergraduate, I realized I hated vocabulary. I was learning French, I was learning Spanish, Italian, German, and with every new language, I hated vocabulary. And what I loved was the semantics, the grammar, the syntax. I loved the technical aspects of languages. So about halfway through my undergraduate degree, I started learning C on my own. So basically, I'm a self-taught programmer. I taught myself C programming, and then I later taught myself C++ programming. I went back a few years after that and received a master's degree in computer science, but I was working in the industry with an undergraduate degree in Spanish, which is completely unheard of. But I love programming, and so it drove me to be as good as I could.
Now that's a fascinating sort of. I'm seeing this quite a lot at the moment with people, particularly in the coding areas and the coding field, but you all seem to be self-taught, which fascinates me because I think it's maybe this self-taught element has basically made you what you all are. This is why you're all the rock stars of the future. You're the guys who are building the new decentralized world. And I think maybe a lot of the key of that is the very fact that you are self-taught. So when you said you're self-taught, is that something you learn online, or did you go to courses to do this? Where would someone even start to learn C++ and all that kind of stuff?
Right. Well, so that's a great question. It comes from the passion. Like the reason why I do what I do, whether it's teaching myself C++ or C, or whether it's creating DemonSaw, comes from this fire inside, which is my passion. So I believe in promoting anonymity, security, privacy. I believe in giving us the ability to protect what we do, whether it's secure communication or secure sharing. That's driven by this fire inside of me, which is the need of empowering the individual. So whether we have computer science degrees or not, whether we're teenagers or whether we're in our 80s, I want everybody to have the same opportunity to protect their information. And so that passion, that desire inside of me drove me to learn C, it drove me to make DemonSaw, and it drives me in every decision I make in life. Without that passion or that fire, I wouldn't have been able to learn C on my own, and I sure as heck would not have been able to create DemonSaw as a part-time effort while working full-time for Rockstar. So it all comes back to that fire, and it really goes back to I love quoting Star Trek. I'm a big Trekkie, but it really goes back to Mr. Spock's quote, and that is, "The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few." It really comes down to that, is if I can sacrifice a small amount of time and effort and energy, or even years of my life for the greater good, then I'm hoping that I can leave this world in a better state than I found it. And honestly, that's all I can ask for, and that's what I'm trying to do with DemonSaw.
Yeah, so I mean, was it in this process of where you sort of were going through this process of learning code and writing code? Was it in that the seeds of what you just spoken about, the passion arose when was it just basically understanding when you were actually starting to get deep into this and thinking, man, this is really centralized, this is really quite messed up, and obviously the more, as you know, the more down the rabbit hole of that you go, the more you understand how kind of sinister it is, quite really, how the control they have over over our communications and stuff. So that's what I'm saying, was it something that really kind of awoken in you in the process of learning code, or was it something that was there all your life and it was just you wanted to make that happen through the process of writing C++?
Yeah, it's been a work in progress. To be honest, it's taken me about 15 years of being a professional developer to not only be able to have the skill set and the knowledge to make DemonSaw, but to even really know that DemonSaw needed to be made. It's taken me years and years of learning. Perhaps I wasn't the quickest of studies, but it's a process that I've gone through. 15 years ago, I created my first file sharing app, probably about 2000, when Napster was just starting to get sued. It was a file sharing app that was called Voodoo Vision. It was great. It worked. But it was a peer-to-peer model. It was also had a centralized database. It was a model that had scalability issues, and it also had some sort of issues with respect to maintaining information and some privacy concerns. But even 15 years ago, I knew that I wanted to create an information sharing platform, something that will allow people to control their own destiny. But it's taken me 15 years since then to be able to make DemonSaw. And to be honest, DemonSaw is still a work in progress. There's a strong, in fact, I'm logged into DemonSaw right now, and I'm getting text from a lot of the community members. Most of the text, by the way, guys, I'm ignoring because they're absolutely ridiculous. I'm joking with the guys right now, but it's a work in progress. When I launched DemonSaw 2.0 at DefCon 23, there were bugs. And it's only because of the dedication and the support and the love of this community that I've been able to fix the bugs and iterate and make DemonSaw a much better application now than even 6 weeks ago. And this iterative process continues, and it will continue for 3.0 coming out in 5 or 6 months, and it will continue in 4.0. But I'm just the guy who writes code. The real heroes are the people that use it and the people that believe in what I'm doing and the people that support me, the people that came to my DefCon speech. These are the people that are really the ones that are changing the world. Maybe I'm the catalyst, maybe I'm the flick, the match, but the real people that are going to change the world for the better are these community members and these people that are supporting me. So thank you, guys.
No, that's. I mean, it's one of the things that I think it's fascinating. Even in the name, DemonSaw is the fact is it NSA is right there, right bang in the middle of the actual name of the product.
Right.
Is what you're doing, and it's one of the things that. When did you become aware about the NSA and how kind of intrusive they were? I mean, because you obviously made
Right.
it quite a focus of DemonSaw. So I mean, when
Right.
did you sort of become aware of that?
Well, for growing up in the church, I grew up in the church in a very repressive, controlling, conservative environment where I felt for many, many years I could not be myself. I felt constrained. I almost felt entrapped. I just felt like I wasn't allowed. I wasn't allowed to fly, I guess is the best analogy. And so I learned through a growing process that people are their best selves, not in spite of who they are, but because of who they are. So we don't always feel safe. We can't always trust the technologies we use in everything we do. I try to improve that. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to provide technology solutions that help people feel safer and help people be their best selves, not in spite of who they are, but because of who they are. And this is a very, very important point because the more we feel trapped and the more we feel hesitant to be ourselves, the less society will evolve, the less we'll achieve, and the more miserable our existences will be. And so it's really an act of breaking out of our shells. And that's been my process really the last 5 to 10 years, is learning how to be my best because of who I am.
Well, I think it's very, I mean, it's an interesting point you made there, and it's something that we both got in common. That, you mentioned there the early sort of religious experience. And I think one of the things that, regardless of anything with religion, I don't want to tackle that issue tonight, but I think one of the things that you learn, I think it's a common one, is you learn that you are no better than anyone else. We are, right. and equally, and no, I think the bigger point of what I find really inspiring about DemonSaw, and as you know, I fly the flag for Safe Network and stuff, is that nobody has the right to be the middleman between any of us. This is a point. It's all right saying, we can sit here and we can all, know we can sit here for hours and tell you about, why these are bad and why this isn't good. But the bigger point is that nobody gave them the right to. Nobody gave the right to anybody to stick between me and you, or you and X and anybody else, from knowing knowledge or communicating. And what you're doing with DemonSaw and what's going on with the Safe Network, to me, that's what I was saying to you before we went live. It's like these are the epoch moments of your human civilization. But this momentum has taken a lot to carry through. And I think it's one of the things that people forget, that the reason we can even have this conversation, even understand the concept of freedom, is because of the momentum of a lot of that's gone on through time. And to me, it's always amazed me that I remember when the internet came around in '94. I thought this would, DemonSaw and Safe Network. I thought that's going to be how it was going to be, but it didn't. It didn't turn out to be that way. So I think, to me, it's inevitable. I think, as I said to you before the podcast, I think decentralization is inevitable. I think it's just an inevitable part of the future, and I think it's just because I think, like, as you said before, it's that in internal human awareness of wanting to communicate and connect with everybody, which is what DemonSaw in particular allows you to do. Now, for just to sort of give people who maybe not aware of DemonSaw, just give us a quick overview of what DemonSaw does, and what it kind of what the concept of DemonSaw is about.
Sure. Well, DemonSaw started as about 2 years ago. I was living in Edinburgh, Scotland, as we discussed. I was living in Europe basically for 9 months to finish up Grand Theft Auto 5 on the PS3 and the Xbox 360. It was a lot of fun living in Edinburgh. For anyone who hasn't been to Scotland, there is a pub literally on every corner. In fact, no matter where you are in Edinburgh, you can throw a stone and you will hit a pub. So 2 years ago, after finishing what is the greatest piece of entertainment in the history of humankind, whether it's a movie or a game, Grand Theft Auto 5 is not only the most successful and popular, but the best form of entertainment ever made. And it was a privilege and an honor to work with Rockstar and still be a member of the Rockstar team. By the way, the best job I've ever had, the smartest group of people I've ever worked with. But after we finished up the PS3 version, I found myself contemplating where we were going, what the NSA was doing, what was being proposed by individuals like David Cameron, the Prime Minister of the UK, or individuals like James Comey, the FBI director, where people want to decrease the amount of encryption, and people want to provide the government back doors to decrypt our information. And I found myself getting very, very angry. And so I was frustrated, and I was frustrated about the surveillance. I felt like I was hopeless. I felt like our privacy was being diminished to the point where we wouldn't have where we could protect our secrets anymore. And so out of this frustration and this anger, I had this idea about DemonSaw. And so DemonSaw is an application that's a secure and anonymous app that's meant to protect our privacy. And by doing it, what it does is it allows individuals to set up their own private decentralized clouds where security is made easy and they can securely communicate or securely share information without any third parties involved. So in essence, they become their own root authorities, they become their own PKI, they become their own certificate authorities, and they control their own data transfer. Now, out of this frustration and this anger towards the FBI and the NSA and the UK government and the surveillance aspects that we learned so much about from Edward Snowden, I was able to rechannel this this dark energy, which, by the way, where the name DemonSaw came from, a lot of this dark energy, I was able to rechannel it into a message of hope and a message of liberation to make people unencumbered. And so where DemonSaw started as this act of defiance and anger, it's since grown into an application of hope and an application of a better future. And so basically, the best way to think about DemonSaw is it's like a decentralized cloud that you control, and it makes security simple. It's a mesh-based network of proxy nodes, kind of like Tor, kind of like uTorrent, but it's decentralized and it's not peer-to-peer, and that's where it's totally different than peer-to-peer applications. I have many people now, DefCon friends, non-DefCon friends, that host their own private DemonSaw networks where they and their friends can totally share and communicate securely, and they can do so from machines in their own homes, or they can do so with machines on the internet. So it gives everybody the flexibility to set up their own secure environment however they want. I don't log, I don't have any ads, I don't charge any money for it, I don't package up software, I don't know anything about how you're using it. And part of DemonSaw is also open source, and I'm open sourcing more and more of it as the weeks go by. So that's kind of what it is.
So, I mean, what in the kind of like, if you go to your website and you can read about it and stuff, which I'm sure many people, and I would encourage everyone just go out there and to go and check out DemonSaw, you know, what it's all about. You mentioned something called social cryptography.
Right.
Now, for us, you know, who are non-kind of coders and, you know, people who don't even, you know, kind of understand what that, you know, what that means. Kind of, again, give us a brief overview of what, you know, social cryptography means.
Right. So social crypto is this term that I coined, and what it is it's not a new form of crypto. It's not a new form of encryption or hashing or any sort of cryptography. What it is social crypto is the ability to make security simple and easy for people who are not technical people. And sorry, I think I turned off my camera. And so what it does is the way that security, the way that crypto becomes effective is by a large set of entropy or randomness that can be fed into a bunch of algorithms to generate keys and be used for hashing. So randomness is kind of the key, or entropy is kind of the key to have very, very good security. Well, social crypto says instead of random number generators or instead of private and public keys, what we're going to do in order for individuals and groups to come together is we're going to take our shared knowledges and experiences, so things that the people that we share stuff with, we already have in common. Most people that we interact with, we already share things in common. Like you and we just met, but we already share in common the Safe Network and MadeSafe and Daniel and DefCon and this podcast and Rich. There's a number of things we already share in common, this URL. So if we simply use these shared knowledges and experiences, so this contextual awareness that we have in our minds, and we map it to URLs or images or PDFs online, then we can take the contents of those files and we can use those ones and zeros as a source of entropy and feed them into standard secure algorithms like AES or SHA-2 algorithms. And we can derive keys and crypto signatures that can result in us deriving simultaneously the same sets of keys that we can use to encrypt our data and messages without ever exchanging keys over the wire. So it's kind of like a shared key exchange without exchanging keys, just by using what's in our minds. And what's cool about what's in our minds is it's very, very difficult to hack. Quantum computing can't figure out what we're thinking. In fact, it's probably best that people don't know what we're thinking, because many times what we're thinking is not good. But what we have in our minds and what we share in our minds is information that really cannot be hacked or guessed. And by using that, social crypto, we're able to derive keys that we can encrypt our data, and because we're using the same keys, we can share content with each other. So it is a keyless shared key exchange. It is a let me rephrase that. It is a shared key that we have together without actually sharing the key. So it is a shareless shared key, I guess is the best way to describe it.
Well, I think one of the great ways I heard you describe it was you gave the example of your mum, your mother, and she said, he said the university she went to and her birthday, and as long as you can remember those two, where the URL of your place of work and your birthday, that's it. And I thought that's a great thing, because we do live in a world where we're told constantly to constantly change our passwords, have ridiculously long passwords, put capital letters in it, put hashtags in it, and before you know it, you've got a million of them. And do you know one of the, I think was I don't think many people are aware of, and I noticed it the other day, because I kind of almost virtually now kind of vacated Facebook, all intents and purposes. I've gone from it, and especially when the safe network goes, I'm going to vacate the lot. But it's sometimes when you notice on Facebook, I saw it the other day, it's like they put up an image and say, this is what you were doing 5 years ago, and you think, you forget that all your stuff is just being is there, and they've got it all. And I think this is one of the things that people need to really wake up to, is that, like you were saying before, not only is it essential that we have our own private thoughts, but nobody gave these people permission. And I don't think people read the small print. And that's what I loved about DemonSaw. There was no kind of small print into it. You're not there sitting there raking off the top and trying to watch everybody else, or selling the information on. It's just the pure decentralized, allowing people to communicate with each other, which I think is very inspiring.
Well, what I've decided to do with when I started DemonSaw, I wanted a different type of app and a different type of company, and I wanted a different type of development model. DemonSaw is just me right now. Now, John McAfee is my business partner, and he's been extremely supportive. But in terms of writing code and making decisions, going back from Silicon Valley from HBO, I think of that, I am DemonSaw. It really is really just the code. But what I wanted to do with DemonSaw is I wanted to try a different approach. I am always online, and I am always available to any community member who wants direct contact with the developer. I have people right now that are giving me direct feedback. This is the source. I've changed my mind many times about features that I've added, or the prioritization of features, just because people have requested it. And that is the honest truth. And I listen to every tweet I get, I read every email I get, and I consider any feature request, and I always respond to emails as well. But I wanted a different type of company, and I wanted a different type of approach. I don't know what you're using DemonSaw for, and I don't even care. I don't want to know. I don't log, I don't track. In fact, if I were given a court order tomorrow by the US government, I would have nothing to turn over. I don't host any infrastructure, so there's nothing to shut down. I know nothing and have no control over any of the routers in existence today, whether they're public, any one of the 15 to 20 public ones that are out there on demonbucket.com, or whether they're private, any of the hundreds that might be private right now. It was a funny discussion I had with my mom. A couple weeks before DefCon, I wanted to test social crypto. I wanted to pass the mom test, as you mentioned before, because if my mom's a really smart person, but she's not a technical individual. She's not a hacker. She's not a programmer. So I knew if my mom could get it, my mom could figure it out, then I knew that non-technical people as well could get it. So I asked my mom if she knew about PGP. So she had no idea what PGP was, and I didn't expect that she would. So I tried to explain PGP to her, and I tried to use terms that made sense, but we didn't get anywhere at all. There is no way I could ever have a secure message exchange with my mom via PGP, even if I scripted it. It would never happen. And so then I said, well, what about this idea? What if you double-clicked on an app and you input 3 web addresses? Just any 3 web addresses. What are they? And she read off 3. She read off yahoo.com, she read off her university.edu, and she read off another one. Oh yeah, I use these 3 every day. So I said, okay. So I told her about DemonSaw. I explained about what if we both use the same three web addresses? And so I kind of described the technology and what we were going to do and how we were going to securely chat, and I went through all that. And then I said, okay, now what were those 3 websites again? In the same order. And she nailed them. 1, 2, 3. No problem at all. Now, that's not going to happen with PGP, and that's not going to happen with any sort of other crypto. But she was able, just by using web addresses, she was able to get into a secure group with me, securely communicate, securely exchange data, whether it's pictures of my nephews or her grandchildren, or whether it's state secrets, or whether it's the documents that Edward Snowden gave to Glenn Greenwald. It doesn't matter. Simply by using 3 websites, we were able to be secure, and we're anonymous and private. And so that was very, very exciting, that a non-technical person could understand a technical concept like social crypto.
Oh yeah, for sure. So I mean, in your kind of like building DemonSaw and obviously what you just discussed, when did you first learn about MadeSafe and what they were trying to build with a safe network?
Well, I was approached by an individual, a member of the MadeSafe community, who had some very, very valid and slightly harsh, but nonetheless extremely valid and prudent and correct feedback about DemonSaw. And this is feedback that I've gotten from many members of the community, mainly around why should we trust DemonSaw? You know, it's not open source. Why should we trust it? Honest, valid questions, without a doubt. And so I entered into, and her handle, I don't know if I can reveal her handle. I won't, just in case it's secret. But it was a very nice lady who was absolutely correct. Why should you trust DemonSaw if it's not open source and it hasn't been audited? Valid question. So what I'm doing about that is I'm working right now to get funding. DemonSaw will always be free. It will always be ad-free. It will always be everything I've ever promised. You will always have access to me as the developer. I'm trying to get funding to build a business version that can provide enough funding so I can do DemonSaw full time. And so the reason why I haven't open sourced the whole app yet is just because I'm trying to do this full time, and obviously I need to pay some bills. So I'm holding off on open sourcing just until I figure out how I'm going to make money. I have open sourced 2 big components of DemonSaw. One is the security layer, was open sourced at DefCon 23. It's called DemonCrypt, and you can get to it from, it's on GitHub. The second thing I just open sourced is the entity component system, or the lower level foundational layer that DemonSaw uses. That I open sourced a couple of days ago. Right now that's available on DemonSaw itself, but I'll be putting that on Git. In terms of open source, I will be open sourcing more as I learn how I'm going to pay for my bills and stuff in the future. But more and more will be open source. I'll probably be open sourcing all of DemonSaw 1.0 when version 3.0 comes out in 5 or 6 months. No promises, but that's what I hope to do. In terms of a security audit, the first thing I'm going to do when I get funding is probably scream and celebrate, and maybe have a few pints. The second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pay for an independent third-party security audit of the DemonSaw code. She was absolutely right, as are many people that have raised similar concerns. DemonSaw will be audited from a security perspective from a third party as soon as I get funding, and we will be seeing more and more DemonSaw open source in the future, in the near future. And I don't know how often, I don't know how much code, but I do promise to give you more and more DemonSaw code as I'm able to, with respect to paying my bills and basically knowing how I'm going to make a living doing this full time.
Cool. So it was in the process of doing that. When did you actually first hear about MadeSafe? I mean, is it quite well known amongst the community you're in? Because obviously, people who aren't in the hacking community,
Right.
you know, Bitcoin and decentralization, and you know, it drips out into the mass consciousness. And obviously, people like you're very much in it. So, in your community you're in, when did you first start to hear about what was going on with MadeSafe and SafeCoin and the Safe Network?
Well, when this individual approached me on the YouTube channel where my DefCon 22 talk is, I started a communication with her, and she is a member of the MadeSafe community. And so I was explaining to her kind of my caution with not open sourcing right now, because at that time Rockstar was very unhappy with me for some of the articles that had come out, especially the Forbes article,
Mm-hmm.
which it was a brilliant article. It was done by a very, very nice Forbes reporter, Thomas Fox Brewster, a very smart guy, very thorough. I think he did a very fair and unbiased article about DemonSaw, and he also expressed concerns about the lack of open source and the lack of an audit. I thought it was a great article, and it was great working with Thomas. But Rockstar was a little unhappy with some of the free press that they got due to the article. And so my job at Rockstar was kind of in jeopardy because of some of these articles. And I'm still employed by Rockstar. They haven't fired me yet. And so at that time, I expressed to her that I'll probably be fired soon, was kind of my thought. And so she read Safe Community and said, hey, Eijah is probably going to be fired from Rockstar. Can we do anything to help him out? And the community automatically embraced me. It was amazing. They came together. They said, you've got a safe place here. Well, no pun intended, but you've got a safe place here, and we'll gladly take you in. If you even want contract jobs, we got them available. But it was, for me, it was a nice, welcoming group of people, like-minded people who empathize with what I'm doing, are trying to achieve the same goals. Our goals are very much aligned. We want the same thing. We're approaching it from two different angles that are very important angles and are collaborative angles. And I think from that time on, I knew that I wanted to do something with MadeSafe and the Safe Network, and I wanted to collaborate to some degree. And we talked about different ways that hopefully DemonSaw can integrate into the Safe Network so that individuals wishing to persist their files online through the Safe Network can share them through the DemonSaw interface. And that's something that I talked with Daniel about, and that's going to happen. I'm not sure when. I know you guys are busy right now, and I've got a lot going on, but that is in the future to integrate with persistent networks, because that's key. We want to persist our files, but we want to not do it with Dropbox, and we want to not do it with Microsoft Cloud or Amazon Cloud or iCloud. These places are terrible, evil places. In fact, I say all the time, the cloud is evil. The cloud is evil because you're giving up control. We're giving up control of our data to third parties that A, don't give a damn, and B, are not held accountable when they fuck up. And that's the honest truth. Automakers in the U.S., if you want to say amen, go ahead and say amen, even though you were not brought up in the church. That's totally fine. But so automakers in the U.S., when they screw up, what happens is there's a recall. And if lives are endangered, people die because an automaker makes a mistake, they're held accountable. They're held accountable to fix the issue through a recall, and even they're held accountable for the lives lost. When a third party like Target or the government or any number of corporations like Adult Friend Finder or Ashley Madison or the government with respect to the OPM hack in the US, if these companies are incompetent and fuck up, nothing happens. They're not held accountable. They don't have to pay out. We get hurt because they fuck up. That is wrong, and that's what we're trying to fix. And if we have to take our data out of the cloud and bring back control of the data and make these companies go bankrupt because they can't get security and technology right, then they can go fuck off. And that is where I stand with respect to the cloud.
Yeah, man, and I think, like I said before, I think it goes beyond that as well. I've always thought nobody has the right. Nobody has the right for this stuff to do it, man. Do you know what I mean? I think this is where I'm fascinated to hear where you think about this. I think there's going to be a convergence of technology and what we've been talking about, and I think the blowback will be the other side of people, and it's the mindset you just talked about. They've built this whole cloud or this whole place where not only, like you say, is it evil, because it's fucking evil, man. It's the worst thing, like you said, but beyond that, what the worst thing it does to people, it it narrows human potential, because it says to human beings, we are in control. We know the best. We have this intermediate bit between you and information, or we need to be, and that's wrong. That's a
Right.
weakening of us as human beings, and they had no right ever to do that, because we're
Right.
all put on this rock and we're going to die on this rock, and what happens in between is down to us, our own
Right.
destiny.
Right. There were some articles I tweeted about a few weeks ago. This was the part of the aftermath of the Ashley Madison hack that happened with, information being revealed of individuals that were seeking extramarital affairs and relationships. And there were a couple articles. Some of them weren't confirmed at the time, but there were some articles about individuals that had taken their own lives as a result of having their name or emails revealed. Now, this is a terribly sad event. I mean, this
Mm,
is tragic, and this doesn't need to happen. Um, and why is so? I'm reminded time and time again. If people ask me why is privacy important, I have nothing to hide. I'm not a criminal. I'm not a terrorist. Why should I be worried about the government collecting metadata or the government wanting backdoors into my crypto? Why should I be concerned as a law-abiding citizen? Well, the reason why we should be concerned is every life is precious. Every life matters, and every life is equal. And when individuals take their own lives, or individuals suffer harm because of the result of data breaches or the result of technology and company failures, that's important. And that matters to me, and that matters to the DemonSaw community, and that matters to the MadeSafe community as well. Every life is important, and
mm.
we can't lose anyone because we screw up security. And like you said, the more we give our information and control to these companies and governments, the more we're going to be hurt, and the more we're going to be betrayed, and the more we're going to be left in a state where our information is just discarded, and there's no accountability. Um, DemonSaw is a tool that allows people to decide for themselves how secure they need their data. And I think that's been one of the coolest things that, in terms of feedback that I've heard from the community, is if people are very, very concerned about their privacy and their security, then they use social crypto in groups, and they host their own routers. So they control their entire network, and they have multiple layers of crypto. But people might not be that concerned. Maybe they only want to share cat pictures. People in the US love cat pictures. It's probably the same in the UK. Not sure
Mm-hmm.
why. People love cat pictures. So if I want to just share cat pics, then maybe I don't want to host my own routers, and maybe I'm okay with one layer of crypto. But it gives people control, and it gives people choice. And that's what we're missing from the cloud. We have no control, and we have no choice.
Exactly. I mean, I, I think we're in the very early and very baby steps of this whole evolution of decentralization. I think we're very
Right.
beginning, very, very start of this. Now, I've heard you speak about the singularity and Ray Kurzweil and stuff like this, and I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
I think that's an inevitable path that we're I think is going to go down, because I do see the inevitable rise of technology. So, where
Mm.
do you think the all this is leading? I mean, obviously, you're doing demon shot, and this is 2015. Where do you think this is
Yeah.
going to be in 2025 and 2035? I
Yeah.
mean, where do you sort of see this whole bigger thing going to?
Well, that's a great question. By the way, I've never been asked this question. I'm really excited to answer it. Thank you. Ray Kurzweil is he's a person that I've always wanted to meet. Now I live in Boston, and he was working in Boston. I think he's still in Boston, even though he's with Google now. But I would love to meet the man. He's a visionary. He's a prophet, a smart guy. He speaks of the age of intelligent machines, the age of spiritual machines, and the age of awakening, where basically machines have become sentient. So Skynet-like, except hopefully without as much death to humans. But there is going to be a shift in our technical culture and technology in general, whereby humans become a part of the puzzle and not the entire set of the pieces of the puzzle. And part of that, part of this shift of technology and this shift of internet in general is going to be what we refer to as the decentralization of the internet. Now, the decentralization of the internet, a lot of people think decentralization means peer-to-peer. Peer-to-peer is one extreme of decentralization. Peer-to-peer is just, it's kind of like, peer-to-peer is kind of like the Tea Party of the Republican Party. So that's a really good analogy. It is a far extreme and doesn't necessarily represent all of the Republican Party. But it's one part of centralization is peer-to-peer. Now, right now, the internet, from 30, 40 years ago, back when we had FTP and back where we had non-Ethernet networks, everything was based on a centralized model. So the idea was that all of us would go to a single location or a single set of servers like Facebook.com or Google.com, and we would conduct our business through this trusted entity. There's this sense of identity providing, there's this sense of trust, there's this sense of centralization, there's this sense of authority. So somehow by centralizing authority and certificate providers and identity providers, we should feel safer. That's the model that we've been working on for the past 30 years, basically. That is no longer how we conduct business online. We are a much more social internet these days. Most of our time spent online is via social means. We chat, we share pictures, we share files. We do, we interact with many, many different people dynamically. It's no longer going to Facebook. The only reason why we have to go to Facebook is because we've been trained to do that. And that's how things have worked. What if Facebook, what if Google, what if Microsoft was totally decentralized? What if they didn't have any ability? What if they didn't even exist anymore? But their feature set, their services that they provided were decentralized entirely. Not only would it mean it's more scalable, but it would mean that it's much, much safer. And so they would lose control. They would lose the ability to filter and report on who's doing what and track and monitor and audit and give away our metadata to the government. The government would hate a model, a decentralized model, but that's where we're moving to. In the next 5 years, 5 to 10 years, we will be shifting our consumption of services, especially social networking services, from a centralized model like Facebook or Twitter to a decentralized model that provides comparable services. Now, this should scare the shit out of Zuckerberg. And if he is kept up at night for any reason, it should be because of the decentralization of social networks. It will happen. He will lose his money, and his company will probably lose users. But it will be the good of society, good of evolution as a whole. I'm sure if he's worried about anything, it's probably that. Same thing with Twitter, same thing with Microsoft. And I think that's why the cloud is becoming so popular right now, because the cloud is one step towards the decentralization, but it's not enough. We'll have a decentralized cloud very soon. DemonSaw is one of many apps that are providing that today.
So you see DemonSaw going forward as a social networking, decentralized social network of sorts. I mean,
yeah, I think so. This is an interesting thread of conversation. I mean, you guys are smart. You know where DemonSaw is going. I mean, whether I've announced it, I mean, you guys know exactly where this is going. So, what the hell? Let's talk about it now on this podcast. Damn it. Yeah. So right now, DemonSaw is a decentralized way to transfer data as well as securely communicate. 3.0 is coming out in about 6 months. In fact, I'm working really, really hard on that right now, and it's going to provide VoIP. So we'll decentralize not only our ability to communicate audibly with friends. That's going online. We'll have file sync, so we'll have a very Dropbox-like environment. But even more, we'll have the ability to do what I call DemonCast. Now, DemonCast is very, very similar to a podcast. And I know the community right now watching this is going to love the name DemonCast. But it's the idea that anybody, anywhere on any DemonSaw network can configure a station or a channel and add content to it and basically be their own radio or video station. Think of Spotify. Think of Spotify in a private, secure, and anonymous network that you control or that's part of the global network. You can not only stream music, you can stream videos. We could stream this podcast now on DemonCast. You could have your own radio station. I could have a station that just streams DefCon presentations that are on YouTube. So media outlets like YouTube and Netflix and Spotify and these places that we go to now to consume streamable content are gonna fade away. There's also a huge ability for potential revenue if companies want to adopt a more decentralized streamable architecture like this. So instead of going to Netflix or going to YouTube or going to Spotify, you just go to whatever network you want and you consume the content your way. Safe, anonymous, private. Now, from 3.0 comes 4.0 and 5.0 and on and on and on. This is the beginning of a revolution for social networking that's going to be totally decentralized. The Facebooks will be totally decentralized one day. Google and all internet search will be totally decentralized one day. Everything that we go to consume data and rely on third parties that have authority is going to eventually be consumed by networks like DemonSaw and other decentralized networks where we simply go to our preferred secure, safe network that we trust, and we will consume the services based on how we want them consumed. Under our control, in our time, we will no longer have to go outside of our own safe network. So this is the future. This is the future of social networking. This is a ways off. This is not a 1 year or 2 year thing. First, we have to build the network. Then we have to build the services on top of that. So far, DemonSaw has file transfer and it has secure chat. When we add VoIP and we add streaming, DemonCast, and file sync, we're not too far off from hosting our own personal content like we have on Facebook. We're not too far off from a decentralized search of the internet like Google. But companies right now that have all the money and have all the power should be very, very afraid of decentralization. But they don't have to be. They can embrace it. They can be proponents of decentralization. They can partner with us. And together we can make a much more safe and private and anonymous internet that meets the needs of the consumer, meets the privacy concerns that we all share, as well as gives them a revenue model that suits their financial needs as well. So once again, it's not about piracy. It's about privacy and maintaining control, and our shit our way is basically what it is. Power back to the people. We still want the content producers to make a living. They produce good quality TV shows, good quality music, good quality movies. They should be compensated accordingly for that. Nobody is proposing that that's not the case, but we need to access our stuff our way. And that's the new model of consumption. And that's where we're going in the next 5 to 10 years. And I love this. I think it's going to be an amazing future. I want to embrace this technology and this architecture. It's going to reinvent the internet as we know it. But it's here. It starts with groups like us. It starts with individuals like the DemonSaw community. It starts with DefCon and hackers and programmers. It starts with people that are not afraid to step up and ask for change.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to like a search engine, like a Google, they're using some pretty intense AI, it seems like. My wife was talking to somebody a couple of days ago who was in Paris, and she decided to go to Google to find out how far London is from Paris exactly, and she types in how far, and it completes the sentence, is London from Paris? So obviously there's some stuff going on in the background. So how would that type of technology be incorporated into a decentralized search engine?
So that is the billion-dollar question, right? I mean, that is, Google has had 10 plus years to perfect that, and Google stood on the shoulders of giants. I mean, we had other search engines before Google. We had other ways of archiving information at universities that we could search through BBCs and or BBSs and other sort of news groups and stuff. Being able to decentralize search in a almost instantaneous way is, I think, going to be helped a lot with innovations like we're seeing, and this goes back to Ray Kurzweil, like quantum computing. I think quantum computing can help us a lot. Um, I think I think a lot of the innovations in multi-core processing. So you're talking about now being able to have computers with 6 and 8 cores who can process data a lot faster. We're able to encrypt and decrypt on the GPU now a lot faster. Hackers do that all the time to try to break crypto. Using GPUs and additional cores and using quantum computing, all these are going to feed into the answer that gets us there. But it's going to be a difficult challenge to go from where we're at now to where we need to be. I think we see a lot of promise with Watson, the IBM computer. There's something, Watson was on something like a week or two ago. You know, he basically is the Jeopardy champion these days. You know, nobody can beat Watson. He is probably the smartest Jeopardy player that there ever will be until maybe Watson Jr., his son, is born, or daughter. You know, so Watson is not pre-programmed. You know, and I'm not an expert in how they've done Watson, but you know, Watson uses a series of data to take a sentence or take a raw question and read into that, read between the lines what the question is really asking to try to derive a solution. So there's a huge amount of artificial intelligence that goes into an near instantaneous answer based on that data set and based on the input data set and based on the probable output data set. And it's not too unsimilar to how the human mind works. When somebody asks us a question, we make assumptions, but we're able to identify answers or potential answers to question based on previously established paths. So we as humans have a lot of machine learning that we've developed over years. Paths develop in our brains, so we create these neural pathways that we use to automatically see a question, see input, and come up with possible outcomes based on just these pre-established pathways. I think it's going to be similar to how we think, but it's going to take a next leap forward in the evolution of artificial intelligence, quantum computing, machine learning, as well as the ability to process large amounts of distributed data almost instantaneously fast. So gigabit internet is going to be a need that we have, so we can send large amounts of data across networks very, very quickly. Everything that's been growing in the last few years is going to peak at the right time in the next 5 to 10 years to, I think, get us technically where we need to be. But there's so many unknowns to the question you're asking. These are problems that some of them we don't even know the problems yet. Some problems we know and we don't know the answers. But everything in the past 10 and 15 years has been leading up to this moment of awakening, this moment of I guess it's the singularity, as Kurzweil speaks of it. Mm-hmm. So the quick answer to your question is, I have no idea.
I think you answered it so well.
Yeah.
The other question I had is, you know, I think it would be awesome once the what did you call it? The Demon Cast is out. I don't know how soon that'll be out, but I think it'd be awesome to run in what we do on Demon Cast, and then we can go in and edit it and then upload it to YouTube or whatever we want to do. So definitely, I'd like to be on top of that too as soon as that comes out. The other question is, how are you already looking into how you're going to maybe do like a micropayments channel for people who want to do the pay-per-view type situations with these?
I think the ad revenue model is almost open-ended. I think there'll be many channels or stations. I haven't decided if I'm going to call them stations or channels yet, so I just use both until one of them falls to the wayside. But there are going to be many different revenue models. Some people hosting content won't need any ads. They'll be just people who do their own podcasts, and they just want a channel where their podcasts are always looping and playing, or they're only live streaming stuff at certain events. I'm very close friends with a lot of the members of the Hack Miami team, which is a group of hackers out of Miami, very smart people, and they meet every 2 weeks in person, and they stream their meeting. So it usually goes on for about 2 hours, and they stream it on YouTube. They would very well use like Life is People DemonSaw to stream everything real time. But you might also replay your podcast or your Demon Cast. So you might have a channel that is constantly feeding maybe your best of, or maybe all of your podcasts, where if somebody just wants background noise on the way to work, they can just tap into this channel and kind of learn about things they didn't hear about. So a company could inject ads inside these streams and have immediate monetization right away, just like commercials are tapped into cable networks or non-cable networks. It's as simple as that. Or you can take a much more, I think, intelligent approach, and maybe do what Chuck did. Did you guys see the show Chuck? It ended a couple years ago, but the last couple seasons they basically were sponsored by Subway. And in order to keep the show running, they had all these blatant Subway ads in the show itself. So they'd be sitting there, and suddenly there'd be a Subway, and be like, "Oh, I really love this Subway, double meatball sandwich with extra cheese. It's so delicious." And so they'd have dialogue for about 10 seconds about Subway, and that's how the sponsorship would happen. Instead of taking you to a 30-second ad that people would skip, they find a more creative way. So that's a potential ad revenue generating model as well. Or it could be publicly funded, like NPR. Maybe the way that Demon Bucket is some of the public routers that are available that DemonSaw users use are publicly funded. So Seth, a good friend of mine, puts up these routers that people use, and everyone donates Bitcoin, and that's how he's able to continue funding these. So maybe it's an NPR model, or maybe it's all the above. Maybe there's certain channels that there's additional authentication criteria, and it becomes more of a paywall. I hope not, because I don't like paywalls, but the sky's the limit, basically.
Yeah, I can't really kind of we kind of skipped over this, and we kind of got we went down a different path. But we were talking about I've got to go back to really, because we were talking about the singularity in Ray Kurzweil, and it's something I've got a really big passion for and a fascination by. I mean, now one of the things that as you know, with the Ray Kurzweil, and he's actually almost put a date on it. He's actually said 2049. I mean, how realistically do you actually think that is to the actual singularity?
Oh, well, one thing I learned from Ray Kurzweil's books is that every book that he comes out with is both brilliant, scary, and prophetic. I think that's how I would sum it up: brilliant, scary, and prophetic. Every book also evolves on his previous predictions. Obviously, he's the flesh and blood individual, and so he's not perfect. But society changes in the course of 2 books. And because society is different now, I think he has to update his predictions. The singularity will happen. There's no question about that. It's just a matter of how soon it happens based on our desire and the choices that we make today. Ray Kurzweil joining Google was a huge step forward. But the singularity will happen. If it happens in 2049, or it happens in 2079, or it happens in 2033, it depends on us. And it depends also on the technological advances and innovations and inventions that we have yet to create in machine learning and artificial intelligence. So it really is, it's kind of a tough thing to put your finger on, because there's so many variables in the equation. And Ray's done a great job with estimating, but I think it's based on the information at hand, and that's why it changes. I would love for the singularity to happen in my lifetime. I would love to see it. I hope it's not like it turned out in Skynet, because that would be a bummer. But I think it's going to be a beautiful thing, and I think humans and machines will coexist, and our existence as humans will be increased and will be improved, because they'll be supplemented by machines. And so we'll be able to live longer lives, we'll be able to live more productive lives, healthier lives, and I think we'll be able to have emotional relationships with individuals on a whole different level that will be beyond physical. We'll be able to have intelligence-based emotional relationships that have nothing to do with carnal interaction. And I don't even know what that would look like, but I'm fascinated to be able to bond with somebody on such an intellectually high level, the way that people are physically intimate today.
Well, you can get glimpses of what the very thing I think you just mentioned then. And I've been fortunate enough to live in South America for a time, and I've been in what would be called shaman situations, and you do
Yeah.
get that situation where you do hit a higher level, and that's why whenever I hear about people doubting the singularity or the concept itself, I think, well, I've witnessed humans being telepathic, so I think if that can happen already, then it's just a case of just upgrading ourselves until we find a way where everybody can get hold of this. Now, I'm fascinated to know what your angle is. I mean, do you think this will be? You mentioned it just then. You thought that humans and machines will, sort of live on the same planet. So you do you think that this will be more of a case that we're not going to meld into the machine completely, and we just become, like because Ray Kurzweil's talked about, isn't it? We just download all our memories and we
Right.
just become the machine. So you're more seeing a biological component, and we'll have to exist as humans, or that's a desire we want to stay as human beings.
Yeah, I think I mean it's tough to predict the next 100 or 200 years. I think the quote that comes to mind for me is Ralph Waldo Emerson said, "The only person you are destined to become is the person you decide to be." And I think that that is a great quote to answer your question, and that is, we as a society will ultimately make the decision on who we become as a society. We won't be forced into some sort of Borg-like machine slavery where suddenly machines are sentient and take over every factory and enslave us, and we are now serving the machine. I mean, it's not science fiction. What will happen is technology will get to a certain point where we use it in more of our day-to-day lives. Right now we see it in the lives of amputees, and we see robotics helping the elderly in ways that never happened before. We see implants. We have hip replacements and other joint replacements, and technology is now part of our lives in ways that nobody ever fathomed 50 years ago. That's been very subtle and very gradual as we improve our technology. I think it will continue to be that. There'll be implants, mind implants. There'll be bodily upgrades that happen as a result of maybe defects or maybe parts of the body fail, larger parts of the body. We have heart implants now. Who knows what's going to happen in the next 50 years? So it's going to be a very subtle transition. It's not going to be the machines invade and suddenly, we're all wishing that we had never hit that switch. It will be a very subtle and gradual change. And I think each new generation is much more open to what the last generation was cautious about. And that's because with each new generation, with the millennials now, they are more comfortable with technology and social networking than the Generation X and Generation Ys were before them. Mm-hmm. And it's an evolutionary process. So the change will be gradual, and as new generations are born, they'll look back and they'll say, wow, how did my great-grandfather ever exist without a mind upgrade? I don't know how he could possibly study for thermodynamics in second grade. How would that even be comprehensive, or how would that even be possible? And it will almost be a joking matter that you didn't get your ocular implants until you were 7. Well, why? Did your parents hate you? And so these are extreme examples, but I think it will be something like that. That's how the discussions will go. And I think it will improve life. And all these questions now about what it means to be human, I think will just solve themselves. I think our future generations will have the forethought and have the intelligence and have the context of their time to make the proper decisions for those questions. Whereas we today, not seeing and not having the context 50, 100 years out from now, are not able to properly answer those questions without that social context. And that's going to be the determining factor.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the it's always fascinating me. If you read many science fiction books or you read films, it's amazing how sometimes they get things almost right, but majority, 80%, they always get it wrong. It's almost there's always a nightmare dystopian about the future, and I think you're very right. I think it's going to be what we want it to be, and that's why I think it's crucial. What brings it right back to today in this moment. You know, it's the actions we do now as individuals, and I think this is one of the things that I think maybe we're aware of, and if we, and I hope a lot of other people should be aware, and if they don't, they should need to understand that this scares the shit out of the system. This what we, this conversation, this idea, this opening of minds and meeting a like-minded people and having this kind of conversations, let alone building up networks and decentralized. This is powerful stuff that, like I said before, we've got the first time ever, I think, in the whole of human civilization, as far as we can go back, we've got the power in our hands. This isn't left to scholars. Oh, I think it's just me and you, Rich, because I think the doorbell's been. But no, I mean, it's interesting that, Rich. So because we talked about the Creswell one. What did you make of what Eijah was just saying? Oh,
well, he has a really strong grasp of it. So, did you answer it in time, or was he waiting for?
I think so. There was an angry buzzer that happened, and I think there were 2 black buttons. So it wasn't a red and a blue button, which I'm accustomed to the red and the blue choice. There was 2 black buttons. I pushed them both. As a good software developer, I pushed both of the buttons.
Hopefully, he didn't pinch his fingers in a door that slid open for 1 inch and closed.
Well, so I went through every possible unique permutation of button presses in a very quick sequence. So I'm sure it worked out fine.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, going back to, I mean, you were talking about future generations. I mean, you just think how ridiculous this is going to be seen by just in 5-10 years' time. Look at us, we've got wires coming out, we've got these stupid things on our heads, Things are going to move very far. I mean, I'm sure, from someone, that's why I love talking to people like yourself, because there's an old quote that we had a guest on the podcast, and he said to me, what people like me, I'm the artist. I push ideas out, and there's people like you. To me, you're the heroes. You're the guys who write all this. So I think it's fascinating times, and what I think, and I said this before, I think this is why I do equate it to being like the new Renaissance, because I think this is the first time where engineers and artists and musicians and all of us are having this conversation, and it scares the crap out of people, out of the system. And I think I don't know if that's something that people in your community are aware of, that how much power we have in our hands, because as I said, just when you went to answer the door, this is the first time ever in I think in human history where we as normal people, in that sense, we're not the academics. We've got our powers on. We can change things, and I think that's a very powerful concept that the system in general, whether it's corporations or government, are terribly afraid of.
Right. Well, it really, I say this all the time, and a lot of people say this, is one person can make a difference, and we see it time and time again. A lot of times we feel like I'm just one person. I have this idea. How can I possibly change anything? I'm not even a ripple in the pond. I'm a small drop in this large ocean that, I mean, I'm insignificant, is what we think. But the reality is that's not true. So if everybody thought that, we would get nowhere in society. Now, it's really, really difficult to build up the courage to change. It's really tough. Not only do we have to believe in our ideas, but we have to believe in ourselves, and we have to be able to communicate and share those ideas and do it so in a way that other people will get it, and the idea has to catch on. So many of these things have to fall into place, but it's not impossible. And it always starts with one person. Every big idea that we take for granted started with one person with one thought. Now, I haven't said this. I don't think I've actually said this in a. I don't think I've ever said this in an interview or in a podcast. But one of the members on DemonSaw is giving me a suggestion right now, which I am respectfully declining to say that. But thank you. So I haven't shared this online before. But 2 years ago, a little bit more than 2 years ago, I almost did not submit my proposal to DefCon 22. And I'm sharing this just to show you how one small decision can change a person's life and change the lives of many, many people. 2 years ago, I think it was April or May, I had been working on DemonSaw or actually a year ago, April or May, I'm sorry. I'd been working on DemonSaw for about 9 months. And it was 3 days before the deadline for DEFCON 22 to submit talks. And I was visiting family at the time, and I thought, I want to submit a talk to DEFCON, but I am scared, and it'll probably be rejected. And I had these thoughts. I said, why would they care about saving cyberspace by reinventing file sharing? Why would they ever care about privacy and security and anonymity and all these things I want to talk about? And why would they care about DemonSaw or some of the innovative things I've been doing? And I was so close to not ever submitting the talk. I can't tell you how close I was. I had decided not to do it. I had said they would just reject me. It's silly. Somewhere, Sunday evening, visiting family, I had some sort of awakening moment. Somehow I came to my senses. I said, you know what? I don't care if they reject me. I don't care if they laugh at me. I'm gonna submit it. I'm gonna do it. And what happens happens because I need to do it. So somehow I was smart for just a brief moment, and I spent the next 3 mornings waking up at 5 a.m. and working on my presentation 4 hours straight before I went into Rockstar. And I submitted it, and I heard nothing for 4 weeks. They said, we got your talk, thank you for submitting, we'll let you know. And I heard nothing for 4 weeks. And then finally, out of nowhere, I got an acceptance email. So for 4 weeks, I just assumed they would reject me. But the thing was, had I not done that, had I not, in that one moment of indecision, decided to put my own insecurities behind me and be confident just for one brief moment, I would have never presented at DEFCON. I would have never met my friends. I would have never presented at DEFCON 23. I would have never met John McAfee. I would have never met the awesome DemonSaw community that I consider close and dear friends now, and I would not even be having this conversation. So truly, one person can change the world by one decision in one moment. If I can do it, then the billions of people out there can do it. It's literally, I was 3 seconds away from making the worst decision of my life. And somehow, I managed to make the right decision. So if I can do it, you guys can do it as well.
Well, I think that's fascinating you say that, because this is a conversation I have many times with many creative people, whether they're musicians or they're artists or authors, and it's exactly the same mindset, and it's that very common situation you just had then, where they have a moment of doubt, but then they do step out into the darkness, or they step out into the void, and then momentum carries on from that moment, and it's all about seeds being sown. And I think you're absolutely right, because I think the power of what we've got now, even in this centralized world we live in, with the even this conversation and stuff, but we have the power to connect, and that's a very powerful element. Do you know what I mean? And
Right.
and I'm sure that I think one of the things that's really important, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, is that I think the thing we can do now in this moment we are in, here we stand in 2015, is to basically make sure we all connect, to make sure that people on DemonSaw connect with other people. So we're not just left in our own little circles of groups and people. We need to spread this out and connect wider networks and forge them together. So, right. I mean, on that kind of area, that kind of subject, I mean, what advice, or where can people reach out to? I mean, obviously they can go to DemonSaw and stuff like that. But what other communities can people who are interested in this reach out to sort of make these connections and these networks? You mentioned the Miami hackathon stuff. I mean, where other sort of places would you recommend that people reach out to and try to connect to?
Well, there are a lot of very supportive and nurturing groups in many different cities across the U.S. There are these things called DC groups, which are DEFCON groups. So what DefCon tries to do is, it's just an annual conference, but there are many hackers and non-hackers that go to DefCon that want to continue a DefCon-like experience for the other 360 days of the year. And in many, many cities across the U.S. and in non-U.S. cities, they get together on a weekly or monthly basis, and they share knowledge. And these are called DC groups. These are great opportunities. If you go to the DefCon website, there's a DC groups link. You can find out if one exists in your city. If it doesn't, you can make one. There's also other hacking groups like Hack Miami. Hack Miami has many, many people who are active, and they meet every other week. It's a great group of people, smart group of people. They present ideas. They travel together to DefCon. They do a lot of things together. So whether you have no interest in hacking, or whether you are wanted on multiple felonies, you can participate in these groups and have like-minded individuals. And even if you're just a programmer, I mean, I am much more of a programmer than I am a hacker. I'm primarily a programmer who, in his spare time, dabbles around with hacking, usually because the company pisses me off. That's usually so. I only really hack when I get angry. Like with Blu-ray a few years back. I got pissed off and I decided to do something about it. But most of the time, I'm just a programmer making beautiful pieces of software. So I am, when it comes to hacking, I am definitely on the noob level of hacking. I mean, I'm mostly a programmer who is interested in hacking, and I fit in just fine with DefCon. And so no matter where you fall on the spectrum, you'll fit in with a group, DefCon or otherwise, that are in your community. You can also reach out. You can reach out to these groups on Twitter or on the internet as well. If you go to DemonSaw.com or you go to DemonBucket.com, you have links to join different groups. If you download DemonSaw and you test out, you join bucket1.demonbucket.com, you have access to many, many smart people around the world that can give you additional advice. So the DemonSaw community is strong, it's active, and it's growing. Or you can always send me an email, and I'll put you in contact with the right people. And that's just Eijah, EIJAH, at demonsaw.com. I always respond. It may take me a few hours or a day or two, but I always get back to you. So if you have the interests and if you want to be part of a group that is like-minded, there's many, many opportunities. But just like me with my doubt about whether I should submit or not to DEFCON 22, it takes action. It takes a moment of confidence and boldness, and to step outside of our somewhat self-doubting shells and say, I'm going to do this, and whatever happens, happens. That's the moment of awakening, and that's where we are right now as a society. And so software like the Safe Network and software like DemonSaw and other pieces of decentralized software, these are all moments of awakening for software, where it takes the total of all these awakening moments to sum up to something that will truly change the world. And so that's what we're all trying to do.
Yep, and I reiterate this, and I'm a strong advocate for this, and I think people have always got to bear in mind that future generations are going to judge us right now with decisions we make right now. And just as we go back and we judge what people did in the Second World War, we're going, oh well, future generations are going to do the same to us right now. And I think it's, I don't want to live in a world, and the reason that we all, like you said, and I think it's important that we can't afford to stay in the corners anymore and just be, I'm with complaining about it all, but I'm not going to say anything, because I don't want to live in a world where people like, Snowden is hauled up in some, embassy in Russia somewhere, or like you say, your great friend, John McAfee, he's running around, on the run. I don't want to live in the world like that, man. You haven't caused any harm to anybody, so why should we live in that world? And this is why it's important to take the action, and I think it's really important. It's not only from the coders of the world, but this is from everybody. The people who are making music, the people who are anybody in your day-to-day lives. It's about stepping up, because I think it's crucial right now, because you live in America, man, and as you know more than anyone else about the dangers of, if we don't say anything, that mindset of the control has a dark element to it, man, and
Right.
you know, I don't want that to expand anymore. So it needs us to step up, because if not,
Right.
future generations are going to look back at us and say, why didn't you step up?
Right. I think that's a great point. In fact, if there's one bit of information that the listeners get from this podcast, I would like it to be that the power is in your hands. You are powerful. You can be in control, but you have to be assertive and take it. You are powerful, and you control your own destiny. And when we assert that, and when we stand up for what we already have the ability to be, that's when change happens. So I am just like you. I am just one of many people who struggle and who deal with the goings on in life and all the shit that happens, and have to balance work and life, and get sick, and you know, try to pay bills. And I'm just like you in all those respects. But it's up to you. It's up to me. It's up to us. We are powerful. We can change the future. But if we don't, then what will happen is either we'll maintain the status quo, or worse, things will degrade. And we've seen a huge degradation in the last 10 years, ever since, well, some would argue maybe before 9/11, but especially in the U.S. since 9/11, with the passing of the Patriot Act and passing of other legislation that minimizes our privacy and minimizes our personal freedoms and rights. Where are we going to be if we don't instigate change, and if we don't stand up and take responsibility and assert our power? Where are we going to be in 5 years? Where are we going to be in 10 years? Where are we going to be in a world where government-issued drones wander the streets at night looking for people in hoodies, or looking for people who are walking suspiciously? I mean, these sound like absurd and silly scenarios, but are they? I don't know. I mean, I don't want to have a suspicious walk at 3 a.m. just because I've had too much to drink and I'm just trying to find my way home. I don't even know if this is a possibility, but it wouldn't surprise me. We can change this. We can do things now to stop the insanity, but we have to stand up. Our politicians in office, it's very, very easy for us to point at individuals like James Comey and say, he's a fool. He's the FBI director. He knows nothing about encryption. He's proposing backdoors. But we also have to take responsibility for the people that we elect in office. We've elected people in office that have allowed these laws to be passed. So maybe our politicians are insane, and maybe they're fools, most likely both, but we're the ones who put them there. So the fault comes back to us. Why did we elect them? And why aren't we electing other people? It goes back to, we have the power, we have the authority. Same thing in the UK, same thing in any other republic or democracy. We have to take personal responsibility. For me, that's really tough, because I don't like to take personal responsibility, because I know I can do more. I know there's always more that I can do, and it's really, really easy for me to come up with excuses. I'm tired, or I'm busy, or you know, I've got to hang out with friends, or you know, the excuses are unlimited. But it still falls back to me. Why did I elect that official, or why didn't I choose somebody else? So I would encourage everybody to not only realize and understand that the power lies with each one of us, take control, but let's change our politics. Let's change our governments. Instigating change is something we control, but it's not going to be overnight either. It's going to take years or even decades to get back to a state where we don't feel threatened, and we're not worried about being arrested on probable cause just because of the suspicious way that I looked at 3 a.m. or the way that I was walking. And that's a future I don't want to live in. You know, that scares me, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to be a bit more optimistic than maybe yourself, because I think it's a clear set of paths. There's a path of the people who want to control, and a dark world they want to go in. But I think it would be a very I think it's going to be a very explosive change in humanity, and I don't see this going to take generations and generations. I think this is all. I think a lot of things that we see around us right now, I guess, are just inevitably all going to crumble away very quickly. You think of the speed that we've all moved on in the last 20 years, and it's not until sometimes you step back and you think, man, it's only 10 years ago that the iPhone, 5 years ago, the iPhone was released. We're moving at such an accelerated point, and we tend to look at things and think, oh well, the future's all very slow and evolution's very slow. Well, I don't happen to think that. I think that once the decentralized flower starts to open up and more people understand it and more people, I think it's going to change the world completely. And I think a lot of these so-called power systems, just like the church was in Europe in the Middle Ages, it collapsed overnight, and before you knew it, out came Galileo and science was happening, and a whole new revolution, renaissance happened. And I think the same will happen again. That's why I'm optimistic, because I think that humans can generally get along. The things that get in the way are the middlemen, and once we get rid of the middlemen, I have a lot of optimism for that, because I think intrinsically the reason we're all here having this conversation is that we've got that inside us as human beings, because if we didn't, we'd all killed ourselves a long time ago, and we'd all be but so that's the reason we're here. That's what gives me optimism.
Right. Well, I have the last 2 years of my life have been a very great journey. As you can imagine, I went from self-doubt to creating an app that people are using and are loving and are providing invaluable input for me to make even better. And throughout this process, I learned a lot about myself. And one of the things I learned, and I have a great friend, Mr. Joshua Corman, who's a gentleman who's really concerned about safety and is an activist for privacy and safety. And one of the things he taught me is that we need to be honest and transparent, and we need to be real. And I realized that we are all humans, right? We all get hurt, we all get depressed, we all suffer, we all have dreams and hopes, and we all have regrets. We all say things and do things that later on we say, oh, that was stupid, why did I do that? And so we're all human. We all share that commonality. And one of the things I learned most in this entire journey was that by being open and transparent and being real, empathy is possible. Mm-hmm. People will hear you, and people will learn your message, and people will get who you are. And when we understand each other at that level, we can move mountains. Yes. And so and that is the most powerful message that I think that I can give anybody, whether it's my hacker and programmer friends, the people I interact with at DefCon, or even the people I work with at Rockstar, and even my family, is that if I am honest, transparent, and real, I open myself up and I make myself vulnerable at that level, that emotional level, life is so much easier. Not only for me, but for all my relationships. But it's that vulnerability that's scary. And for me, that's been a huge learning experience the last 2 years, because making ourselves vulnerable is really tough, because we can be hurt. And that's the only way to get to that next emotional level, and is to make ourselves vulnerable. When we have a relationship, we date somebody, we eventually marry them, we have to be open on that level. If we want to have deep and lasting friendships, we have to be open on that level. Building an app or starting a company or being an activist for change in the realm of privacy, security, anonymity, and the internet is also about having a relationship. What we're doing today is not only talking, but we're having a relationship with everybody out there who is listening or feels the same way we do. You are not alone. You are not alone. You are not crazy. The way you're feeling is right, and what you want and how you want to change the future is good and is the direction we need to take. But you are not alone. There are many people that are just like you and feel the same way. And if we come together, we will change the future. There's no question about it.
I think you you touched on something really important, and that's like the community. You know, like I can tell how much your community has meant to you over the past couple of years, and just over the last year of getting to know Tim and some of the other folks in the Safe Network. It's like, you know, this is how things, when they get started, they get built up, and next thing you know, it's like this is not just a community; it's a support network. It's people that are, like you say, you generate empathy by getting to know people and being honest with people and learning from people. So yeah, I love what you just said. It's super important.
Yeah, it's a tough journey. At least it's been for me. I tend to think that I'm a little slow when it comes to like evolving in my personal life. I always, you know, I didn't really I didn't really get my computer science degree until I was mid to late 20s, and you know, when I should have gotten it when I was 21 or 22. And so I tend to think that I'm a little behind in almost everything in life. You know, I'm a single guy now, no family, and I'm like, well, all my friends have family, and you know, so I tend to be a little slow in most decisions, but that's okay. I mean, I've come to understand, and I've come to accept that. But that empathy and that transparency is really key. That's how we make business relationships work. That's how we make personal relationships work. And I have yet to find one person in this world that doesn't respond positively to me being open and honest.
Yes.
I've yet to find one person. Even trolls and even people who start a conversation in a very negative way will still empathize and will still say, okay, I understand what he's trying to do, although I don't necessarily agree with it. And I'll give you an example. Obviously, DemonSaw is not totally open source yet. We're moving in that direction, but there are a lot of people that have posted on the Hack5 YouTube station where they interviewed me a few weeks ago. And a lot of people were very supportive in what I'm doing, but also were very honest and said, you know, it's not open source, so I respect your reason for not making it, but I still choose not to use it. And I respect that as well. But a conversation that could have been very divisive ended up being very supportive in that I respect that, I understand that, I'm totally cool with that. Let me explain my reasoning, because I'm not trying to change your mind, because I shouldn't be able to change your mind if you feel strongly about that. But let me at least provide context. And that's the key. And so then we're able to overcome the differences, and then we're able to establish a camaraderie and a mutual understanding. It still doesn't change the outcome. They still believe that, and so they should. But it allows us to at least find common ground. And I think that is a great outcome. If the worst case scenario is common ground, we can evolve society, and we can move our agendas forward in the right direction. Because I will not always agree with you. I will not always agree with you, Rich. I mean, I'm sure there are things that we totally will disagree with over many, many pints, but we share much more in common.
Mm. Yeah.
I mean, I love Guinness. You guys might love Guinness, but it's nothing to fight over, right?
Exactly, and I think no, I think you're absolutely correct. And the way I've always seen this, and this my visualization of this, I've always sort of seen it as that we're almost autonomous. We're beings, and all you need to do is just go and touch someone, connect them, switch them on. They're going to switch someone else on, and before you know it, the whole world lights up. Because I'm completely like you, and this is what I'm finding over and over again. This is the point about stepping out, is you start to realise that there's so many like-minded people out in the world, and we might, like I say, we might disagree on the small things like, do you like Guinness or do you not like Guinness, but we're all generally on the same point of view, because that's what I was saying before. I think the people that the narrative that we live in, and the media and everything around us is basically of the. Let's put it this way. Use the analogy. When we were all at school, when we were at primary school, or the very first school, there was always that kid who was a bully, who would steal your sweets, push kids around, and he was like, oh, but the rest of us were fine.
Right.
And it's the same. All that's happened is in a bigger world, those people became the politicians, the CEOs, the people of these corporations, and the governments and stuff. But but the rest of us, we're all fine. But the only way we're going to move on, like you said, is to step out and like you very truly and very inspiring, as I said, it's stepping out and making that resistance against the fear, which is the hardest thing to do, but it's the greatest thing to do, because once you step into the light will will cover your back, and and all the rest of it. Now I have to ask you, you're a programmer, you spend all your day programming, sitting there in front of the screens and all this kind of stuff. Well, I'm fascinated in this as well, because I know it's something you do, but what is a programmer? What do you do when you're not programming? I mean, do you create? Do you like go and ride on your bike? Are you athletic? What does it do? What does a programmer do when he's not programming?
I definitely wouldn't be so bold as to speak to all the programmers in the world, because I'm sure I'll get many evil emails saying, I don't do that. How dare you generalize what it means to be a programmer, propagating the stereotypes, and they would be totally right. But I can tell you what I do, and then whether or not that applies to other programmers, I'm sure there are some that there's overlap. But so for me, it was kind of funny, because before I became a game programmer, when I was just a programmer for American Express and did independent work and my previous life, I would play a lot of video games. And when I became a game programmer, I stopped playing video games. I don't know if it was because I was making a video game 12 hours a day, but this is a common thing that happens to programmers in video game companies. Not necessarily designers or artists, but for some reason, a lot of programmers, they stop playing video games, or they don't play as many. I'm not sure why. So for what I do for fun, it's odd. It's extreme. What I do for fun is I write DemonSaw code. So that's number one. So I go to Rockstar and I write code for 8 to 9 hours a day now. Doing whatever I do there, and then I come home, and either in the morning or in the evening I write code as well. But why it's relaxing to me is because I make the rules when I write my DemonSaw code. I don't have to read a bug and say, oh, okay, I need to add this feature. I make all the decisions. If I want to implement a certain feature X, I do it that way. If I want to do it Y, I do it that way. It's very refreshing to have full control over the development decisions. And for me, I find it not only refreshing, but I find it a great escape. But when I'm not programming, because I definitely don't want people to say all he does is program. Well, I do a lot of programming, that's true. But when I'm not programming, and feel free to laugh at me, it's totally fine. When I'm not programming, what I really love to do is you're gonna laugh. I'm gonna warn you. I love watching documentaries on Netflix. No laughter. Okay, well that's good. So here's why I like it so much. Not movies, not TV shows. I love watching documentaries that have nothing to do with programming. And I learn about everything from like Cocaine Cowboys from Billy Corben to the FDR presidency to what the Civil War was really about. To you name it. It could be anything. The history of New Orleans. I mean, it really doesn't matter. I just love learning about new things. And the further they are away from programming, the better off they are for me, because I'm not thinking about programming. Most recently, I've been watching Unsealed Alien Files Season 2. So, which, I'm a big fan of like alien conspiracy theories, because it's fun. Who knows if it's true, but I enjoy it.
Do you ever listen to Joe Rogan?
No, I don't, but I should.
There's just one podcast that's worth listening that I think you'd get a kick out of, and it's with Randall Carlson. Carlson, Joe Rogan podcast. You'll love it.
Okay, cool. If you guys don't mind sending me a link, I'd love to try it out, because I love anything that makes me think using a different part of my brain than the programming part. Whatever part of my brain I use for programming, even if it's pseudo-fiction like the History Channel's become, Ancient Aliens and Unsealed Alien Files, I enjoy it because, if nothing else, it's a good laugh because they're so over-dramatic in the delivery. If, like for example, they'll say, what if the government has been concealing for years? Then, what if everybody's been abducted? One person thinks this is true, and then they'll cut to some sort of individual that has this crazy idea, and suddenly they're implying it's fact. I love that over drama. That, to me, I just laugh. I laugh, but I still watch it. So,
well, it's fascinating to me because you write in code, and for instance, myself, when I'm sitting there and I'm writing drawing a black ink on a paper and stuff. There's a very much similarity. So in that similarity, I love to listen to music while I'm creating. So when you're sitting there programming, whether it's at Rockstar or by yourself at DemonSaw, do you actually do this in silence, or you actually listen to stuff at the same time?
I used to only code in silence, even as little as 3-4 years ago. But I've learned to listen to music because I find that based on the type of code I'm writing, music helps me. But it has to be a certain type. I don't have a formula for this yet, but I listen to all types of music almost. There are some times that I'll listen to New Age music or classical music, or I'll listen to dubstep. Like sometimes I love just to put on just random raw dubstep that normally I would never listen to, but somehow it fits the algorithm that I'm writing. One of my favorite types of music to listen to is, oh yeah, that's right. Somebody just I'm going to mispronounce this name, but a community member on DemonSaw introduced me to Perturbator. I probably mispronounced that, but Perturbator was amazing. It was like the perfect music you would ever want to listen to if you were about to hack somebody. You just put it on, and no matter what type of hack you're doing, it would fit. It's incredible. I don't know how they did it. It's pure science is what it is. But I was just introduced to that. So my favorite type of music that fits a specific need is probably Marilyn Manson. As crazy as that sounds, Marilyn Manson is somehow, there's nothing quite like it when the need arises. And usually I'll listen to Marilyn Manson when I'm really, really deep in a low-level algorithm that has given me a headache. And I'll put on Marilyn Manson to forget about my headache while I finish writing the algorithm. But most of the time I can't listen to Marilyn Manson. So it's all over the map. I've even been known to put on Daughtry and Carrie Underwood from time to time. Just so it's all over the map. It really just depends on my mood. Usually I'll put on something like in the last 20 years, but it can vary as well.
So on the one with when you're writing code and stuff, because this absolutely fascinates me, because I think there's a very much overlap between the art world and what you're doing, because you're being creative. Now you're wrestling and you're sitting there and your creative form is with numbers and codes and all this sort of stuff. Now do you ever have any, like I do, I mean, I'll give you an example. When I'm creating stuff, I'll be doing something, and how I start off, and then before I know it, the finished article is completely different to how I started off with my clear intention when I started off. Is this the same with you? And equally, do you have moments where you're be sleeping and in your dreams you have your dreams of code? Because I have that with artwork. I have pictures come to me all the time in my dreams. So I was wondering, is it for a program? Do you have like like you're like Neo in the Matrix, where all you see is like, yep. Okay.
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, years ago when I was learning Spanish, I knew I was starting to get the language because I started dreaming in Spanish. And it was the most bizarre thing, because you dream in another language and you understand what's going on, but there's no need to translate. Normally, if I would start speaking in Spanish now, I would still have a translation. I would know what I'm saying in English. But when you dream, that doesn't happen. Dreaming in code is a very real phenomenon that happens a lot. And usually what will happen is as I'll go to bed, I'll force myself to go to bed when I have a really big problem that I can't solve. So some huge bug that either the community found or happened once and I can't reproduce, or both. And I'll have no idea how to fix it. And I'll think, well, clearly it's a bug, or clearly it's something that I need to do, and I have no idea how I'm going to do it. And of course, it's very, very easy from the outside looking in to say, oh, Eijah will always know how to write the code, and he will always know how to make the features. There are features coming up in 3.0 that I have no clue how I'm going to make. There are features that I'm totally clueless, like I don't even know how I'm going to pull it off. But I didn't know how I was going to pull off social crypto either the day that I started writing it, and I wrote it in a week. So no matter what happens, I've learned that I figure it out in the end. Dreams are key to that, because sometimes I'll solve a problem in my dream, and then I've been known to wake up in the middle of the night, and sometimes I have a code journal that's right by my bed where I scratch out a solution before it's gone. Or sometimes most of the time I'll forget the code journal, and I'll have to like find my way across the house to find a pencil and paper and jot it down. Meanwhile, I'm wide awake. So there's a 50-50 chance when that happens that I'll just code the solution right there at 3 a.m. Or go back to bed. So that does happen a lot, and it's good when it happens, because then I feel like I'm getting like twice the amount of work done.
See, this is a fascinating an area to me, because I think this is something that's going to basically progress as we go along, in time, because, like you said, this is a very common feature that happens between artists, and what you've just described. Right. Exactly the process I go through. I put a book by the side, I'll scratch an idea, sometimes I get up and I think, this is the same process. So all it's happening is in you, it's code, with me, it's artwork. And I think in the future, we're going to, at the moment, like I said before, we're kind of like monkeys poking in the dark with a stick. But I think we're going to find the solutions to this and work out how to implement them. And like you said before, upgrade that. And there will definitely become a time, like you said earlier on, where people go, well, and what, you didn't have that upgrade to tap your dreams into code? Because right. I would love to see the day where, I'll give you a quick story. When I first kind of heard about the Safe Network, I wanted to go and, I've had this kind of idea of, Friend 99 app, and I wanted to go down and to learn C++, but the idea of me tackling to learn the C++ was like, ooh, and then to write, and then to learn to write on top of that. Right. But that's a frustrating thing for me, because I would love to learn that skill. And I know that it takes a lot of skills, and I've spoken to a few coders, and they told me, no, you can't shortcut it. It is a long process to do. Right. But I wonder if, and this is the same question I always ask every coder I ever speak to, do you think there's going to come a time where it will become simplified, where it will literally just become the equivalent of, like, I can pick up a pencil and I can draw a house on a piece of paper? Do you think that's going to be like that with code, that eventually will become that simple that anybody, a 5-year-old, could write in it? Or is it a case of a 5-year-old could be writing code right now, but they're just not taught it? I mean, this fascinates me, this whole sort of area of.
Well, that's a great question as well. A lot of people talk about, like, it was so much more difficult to make a game for the Atari 2600 in the early 80s than it is today. And at first glance, that might make sense, because those games were written in pure assembly. But when you really and written by one person usually. When you really think about it, those games had to fit within 8K of memory. And there's only a certain amount you can do in 2K or 4K or 8K. Games today are far, far more complex, because they're three-dimensional worlds that are open-world experiences and have online and are playable for hundreds of hours in certain cases, at least 10 to 20 hours minimum. The expectation for most video games is that if you don't get at least 8 to 10 hours out of it, then you got ripped off for your $60 or your 60 pounds. And so that's the common expectation, is that you should at least get 8 hours. And if you do the math, if you actually divide that, that's comparable to the price of a movie ticket. So if you really think about it, I do the movie ticket comparison. If I'm paying $10 to watch a 2-hour movie, and I pay $60, and the game is 6 hours long, then I paid twice as much or so of what I would have paid for a movie. So that seems overly expensive. If I pay $60 for a game that takes me 60 hours, that's very inexpensive entertainment. That's $1 per hour. Where can you find $1 per hour entertainment? So that's the model I use to justify the price of a video game. But the truth is, games today are far, far, far more complex than they ever were in the past. The difference is we've scoped up the expectations, and in response to that, we've scoped up the complexity. That's why a game like an open world game like Skyrim or Grand Theft Auto takes hundreds and hundreds of people to make. It's not only just the programmers and the designers and the artists and the animators and the producers and the executives, but it's also the people who write the scores, the people who act out the animation sequences physically, the actors and the actresses. It's the marketing team, it's the legal team, it's the founding partners in the company, it's the board of directors, it's the production company, it's the people that print the discs, it's the people that make the inserts, so you know like what buttons to mash to kill the zombie. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of people involved in making a game. So in terms of scope, it's far, far more difficult today, definitely to make a game. However, a game as complex as GTA or Skyrim or Call of Duty is an aggregate of small components. And that is where anybody can learn to program because you tackle these small components. So there is no programmer in any game studio that knows everything about the game. It's impossible. I would argue that no one programmer in a large AAA game even knows 5% of the code base. It is so large in scope, and there's so many millions of lines of code that it truly takes a team in order to produce a game. So in this way, I think absolutely anybody can learn to code. It's really just a matter of priority and skill set. In the future, games will get even more complex. So we've got 1080p now that are now going to 4K. The next expectation of games is going to be 4K or possibly 3D, although I'm not a 3D fan. So when games get more complex in the future, people will have to know more and will have to do more and have to be more flexible in their programming role, but teams will also increase. So I think games won't get simpler, code won't get simpler. Our ability to adapt to complexity will increase. And I think that's the key right there, is the human mind will adapt to deal better with more complexity in the same way that it's adapted now to deal with complex AAA games compared to a small game that fits on an 8K cartridge in 1981. So our ability to adapt to complexity improves, not the code simplifies. And that's an important distinction.
Well, I think you're absolutely right there, and you see the perfect example there about the cartridge in an Atari in the 80s. Man, we're only just go back 100 years. Just think how much we've just, as a species, have just moved on in 100 years, and then you just project that in the future. And I like you say, I think we're living in the greatest times of the human civilization. I really do. I think these are great things, and I think one of the things that going back to what you were saying earlier on, and it's something that I use a lot of the time, and I think it's really key to maybe a message for all of us, your DemonSaw community and all of this, I think is everyone, is basically the idea that we are the brains of the central nervous system. You are, I am, we're all of this. You have the power to shape destiny and innovate by yourself and stuff. And this is what I think is really inspiring to me, is like I said to you right back at the beginning of the podcast, I think the most inspiring thing to me is that you haven't been we're being disturbed. I was just going to say, one of the things I think the most inspiring is the fact that this has all been self-taught. None of this has been laid down by any education and rules and stuff like that. Rich, can you hear me? Are you there? Oh, no.
All right, I think I just let my flatmate in for real now.
No worries, man.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. No, you're absolutely right. You please continue.
No, I was just saying that. I mean, what inspires me is that all this has been taught by self-learn, and I think this is the way that is the most inspiring thing. And I think going back to what you were saying, and and I'd hope it gives you someone as a perfect example of what you were saying is there you are over in Boston, and here I am over in Guruk in Scotland, and you had no idea that when you were stood in front of that DefCon 22 that someone like me would be inspired. And that's the very inspiring message you've been saying. I think we're all trying to say is that if you just sow the seeds, it's amazing how many people are out there. I mean, you mentioned it earlier on one of your ones about how someone in Portugal had rung you up out of the blue, and this is it's so inspiring, and I think it's, these, like I said, these are the greatest times. Man, I'm aware that you've got someone in your house and that, so I'm quite happy to wrap all this up if you want, my man.
Oh, we could go for a few more minutes. It's not a problem. No, I don't have any hard stops. I'm really enjoying this.
Okay.
So
No, that's cool.
yeah, well, so one thing, so what you said is absolutely true. And I know I said before, if there's one thing that people take from this podcast, it's that they are powerful. We are powerful. All of us as individuals are extremely powerful. We can and we will change the world. And our moments of doubt limit our ability to be what we're always destined to be. And so it's those small moments of doubts that we have to overcome. It's that moment of fear and doubt that I had where I didn't think my DEFCON 22 talk would be accepted. And I overcame that through some sort of interpersonal struggle, and good things happened. And the honest truth is, I'm no different than anybody else. I'm just an individual who goes through life doing the best that he can, who tries to become better every day. And I try to be a role model. I try to be a good citizen. I try to be a good friend. And I make mistakes. I'm human, like all of us. But we are all powerful. We don't need governments. We don't need corporations. We don't need somebody else telling us that we're better off because of them. We can control our own destiny. And that, to me, is the most important message. Forget about me, forget about DemonSaw, forget about all my silly stories and my pub crawls in the UK. Just remember that you are powerful and you control your own destiny. And if that's all you get from this talk or anything I've ever said over the last 2 years, then I feel like I've done my job as a programmer and as an individual. So that's why I'm here, is just to show you that I'm no different. I mean, I've got this silly headset strapped on, and we're talking about cool stuff, but I'm just like you. I'm just a normal person, just like you. Just in a weakness to make the strong decision, and it led to awesome things. So that's
yeah.
So anybody out there who's thinking about doing something great and awesome, and you're having your doubts, do it. Do something great and awesome. Do what you believe in. Follow your heart. And it's not just making that decision to do it. You've got to put the time in. And that's where step 2 gets really complicated. So this is a great segue, I think, into the 3rd chapter of this podcast, and that is, how do we change the future? So we've talked about where we've come from. We've talked about some of the cool things that we've done in the last 2 years, and some of the innovative ideas that I've done and others have done. But how do we get there? So first of all, it's that moment of awakening, that moment of saying, I'm going to do it, I'm inspired, I'm going to go out, and whatever the crazy idea is, I'm going to do it. The second step is keep that attitude. If friends and family and others doubt, and you firmly believe it, you follow that. You listen. Now, it doesn't mean you'll be right, because we make mistakes, but if you feel strongly about something, then follow that. Heed their advice. You obviously trust them as friends and advocates and family, but sometimes you'll be alone. And sometimes you're the only one that believes that, and you've got to stick with that if you're that strong in your belief. And that's hard too. But once that's done and you've overcome that, then you've got to put in the time. You've got to work hard. You've got to work your ass off. The 10 weeks leading up to DEFCON 23 was probably the most difficult 10 weeks of my life. In fact, it was. It wasn't probably, it was. I worked full-time at Rockstar, probably about 40 to 50 hours. Then I put in another 30 to 50 hours a week on DemonSaw. I'll give you an idea of my average day. I woke up at 6 a.m. I wrote DemonSaw code for 4 hours. I jumped in the shower. I got to Rockstar by 11. I worked at Rockstar till 8:30 at night. I got home by 9:30, and I worked on DemonSaw again anywhere from midnight to 2:33 in the morning. By the time I started sleeping 10 weeks before, about 6 hours a night, and all weekend long, I would work 12 to 14 hours on the weekend. as I got closer to DefCon, my sleep trickled off. In fact, if you go back and you look at my tweets, you'll see that I actually tell you the average amount of hours I'm sleeping. And as I'm approaching DefCon 23, I'm averaging about 3.5 hours a night up to that last week. One night I pulled an all-nighter, which was insane, and then got on a plane to fly out to Vegas. But sometimes it's really, really hard. But that goes back to, if it's the right thing and we know we got to do it, we've got to put the time in. And those were the toughest 10 weeks of my life. I wrote the entire client application of DemonSaw 2.0 in 10 weeks, including all the social crypto stuff, including the chat, including all the new features. Honestly, I don't know how I pulled it off. It was sheer willpower alone, because I don't know how I did it. It's still a blur. I don't remember most of those 10 weeks. All I know is I had a shitload of work to do, and I was constantly in a state of fear for getting it all done. But it got done. And like I said before, if I can do it, then you can do it. Yep. There's nothing special about me.
No, and I think, I mean, you mentioned, you know, where does this, you know, where do we push this forward? And I'm absolutely agree with you. And I think one of the things that, it's like many things in life where you hear things and they become cliches. And one of the cliches that people hear is people say, you should live every day like it's your last. Well, it is. Every day can be your last, man. And I think that's the thing that people have got to realize. And it's the same with me. I mean, I've spoken about this podcast before. So it's like the secret. I had a near fatal car crash. And I tell you, that woke me up completely, and it made you think, right, okay, I'm going to push myself into everything, and I love it. I wouldn't have it any way, because it's one of the things I try to say to people around me is like, as much as you say you go down rabbit holes, and you can spend hours and hours and hours, and you spend, you know, and you think, oh, where's, you know, before you know it, a whole week is gone. But you know what? I'd rather have that and keep my mind sparking along and enjoying this ride than I would do the other way. Because, you know, the ultimate bottom line is, and I think this is maybe kind of, you know, where I think, you know, like you just discussing where it all goes is, I think people need to understand, I think, like you said, we're in the awakening point, but we have to really utilize it. We've got the most powerful computer ever known. This thing here inside my skull and inside your skull isn't centered controlled by anybody. You control your one, I control my one, but it's the most powerful computer on this we've ever known. And if we can, and to dull that and just be sitting at home watching America's Got Talent or putting you know, it's kind of like no. That's wasting your operating system, you know. And I think that's where we've got to go forward. Is like you said, take the jump. Take the jump into the voidness and the blackness. That's what life's about, man. Take the jump into the voidness and the blackness, and hey, do you know what? If you do it, great things happen, and you get to meet people. You know, I've done it, and I've got to meet you, and that's the great proof. And I think the other one as well. I think this is something I think is really important. I think for people to know is that the world that is being built, this decentralized world, means that anybody can come along with you. You haven't got to be a coder. You can be an artist. You can be a musician. Anybody can have any idea, and we can all come along and we can integrate these ideas and build it. And the future is going to need everybody, not just a set of coders or a set of people like that. And that's something I feel very strongly about. I'm sure it's something you concur with me about.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, very wise words. Absolutely correct. The future is for us to define. Whether or not the age of spiritual awakening and the singularity happens in 2049 or 2149 is really irrelevant, because we are and will continue to define our future, and the future for our children and grandchildren and even beyond. So let's say let's say there's a bunch of listeners out there that are thinking, well, okay, well, I'm not a programmer, I'm not a hacker, but I want to do my part to change the world. What can I do? What can I do to help out with this idea that you're proposing, this decentralization, this movement? How can I contribute? A great question. There's a lot to do that as a non-hacker or a non-programmer you can totally help out with. I'm looking at my Twitter account from a couple of days ago right now, and I'd like to share something that one of my followers, I apologize if I mispronounce his handle, his or her handle, but it is Viralagalis And I got this tweet, and it was inspirational. And I want to thank this person. But he or she said, yesterday, I stopped using Dropbox because I do not want my files to be sold to third parties. Now I am using DemonSaw.com instead. This is such an inspirational and beautiful tweet, and it meant a lot to me personally. Most of my motivation comes from the people who care about the contributions that I'm doing and who give me positive feedback and encouragement and even sometimes change and grow in a different direction. But this tweet was so powerful because the way that we enact change is we refuse the status quo. We stand up and we say, enough. I'm not using Dropbox. I'm not using Microsoft Cloud. I'm not using whatever it is. And I'm going to use something different. We stand up and we demand change, and we change our own consumption habits. And if enough people do that, it starts with one, and then it starts with a handful, and then there's hundreds, and then before we realize it, there's tens of thousands of people demanding change. That is a snowball effect that cannot be stopped. So whoever this person was, I want to thank you very much. It was inspirational and absolutely true. And your act is a perfect example of why I'm doing what I'm doing and why I put in the crazy hours and why why I'm probably no longer going to be a Rockstar programmer in a few weeks or in a few months or whatever the timeline is, because what we're doing is bigger than ourselves, and what we're doing is needed to advance our culture and our society. Like Mr. Spock said, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. But that was a great tweet. So thank you again, whoever you are. I don't know who you are, but you are truly wise and absolutely correct. But yeah, you're right. So you don't have to be a programmer. You don't have to be a hacker. Just demand different. Demand a better solution. Demand better apps. Demand more secure and anonymous and privacy-focused apps. Demand that the companies that you use don't hand over their records to the government. Demand more transparency in our governments and our companies. Demand that retribution happens when companies fail to protect our privacy. Demand that we hold them accountable. Demand change, and change will happen.
Yeah, or the way I've always put it is that the real revolution comes when we all walk away. That's the real ability. We walk away, we build our own world. We don't have to go and demand to the school teachers anymore. We can build our own school. That's the point. We are the brains of the central nervous system. We don't need anyone around us, and that's the thing. And I think it's a dual-sided approach to this, because I think one of the things that's been coming clear across from what you said, and I would only completely say it over and over again, and I come from the arts perspective, is that there are no shortcuts. You're gonna have to go out there. You're gonna have to do some hard work. You're gonna have to do, you have to learn some stuff. You're gonna have to throw yourself down some rabbit holes. Right. But hey, there's no shortcuts in life. But that's life. There is no shortcuts in life itself. And I think that's like you said. That's fighting that resistance. And you can sink back into the resistance. And it's very easy to sit there and watch X Factor and all the rest of it. And before you know it, you're dead, and you're a long time dead, and it's fighting that resistance. So it's a dual-sided thing. It's the greatest thing, but it's going to take some work and effort. But all the best things in life do take work and effort, and they do take people to step their heads above the parapet. Because, as I said before, if people hadn't have done that before, we wouldn't be having this conversation. The reason we can have this conversation is because people, generations back, put their head above the parapet and said, "I don't want to, submit to tyranny and to terrorism." That's why we're exactly the same. We're exactly the same as our grandparents. It's a part of the human condition. We have to stand up.
Right. Right, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, it's a fascinating time to be alive. It's a fascinating time to be an activist for change, for protection of our personal rights and our privacy. And honestly, I'm the future. I've said it time and time again. I know you've said it as well. But the future in 5 to 10 years is going to be different. How do we topple Facebook? We stop using it. All we have to do to take down the giant is simply not log in.
Yep.
The most powerful social network in the world can be taken down by simply choosing not to log in. We just choose an alternative. And so I'm hoping to present an alternative. There are many smart developers out there that have privacy-focused apps that are also working on awesome tech and awesome solutions that will help with this movement and help with our future. We will get to the point, and like I said, Zuckerberg should be very, very afraid. The cloud should be very, very afraid. But all we have to do is simply not log in. So the fact that we have to authenticate tells you it's an archaic model. The fact that there's even a login screen, that we even have a registration process, tells you the model is flawed. Most people don't realize that, is that the login is bad. The registration is bad. I had a meeting with investors today to try to get funding for a business version of DemonSaw, as we talked about. And very, very smart guys. I don't know if they're going to offer me money or not. It went well, but we'll see. But one of the questions they asked is, how many people are using DemonSaw? I knew they would ask this, and I said, I have no idea. I can tell you, I mean, that's the answer you, as a prospective investor, don't want to hear. But I don't know, and nor do I want to know. And so they asked, well, why don't you provide some sort of registration, some sort of form on your page that before a download, they can choose to enter an email address? And no, absolutely fucking not. No. So, and here's why. Because privacy is more fucking important than me trying to generate a list of email addresses to get some money. The honest truth. And if that causes me to lose an investor, then so be it. Because I'm not going to betray anything that I fight for because of me and my own needs to pay my bills. And so it's not an easy thing to do, especially when the investors want to give you money. But you have to have your beliefs. You have to stand firm. And sometimes, like Mr. Spock said, you've got to put yourself last. I'm not going to collect an email address, even an opt-in. No fucking way. Because privacy is too important. And obviously my response to them was a bit more gentler, but that's just not who I am, and that's just not what DemonSaw is, and that's not the right precedence. That's not the precedence at all that I want to set. If I am to make any money from a business version of DemonSaw, then I'm going to make money founded on the principles that got me here in the first place. Founded on the privacy and security of anonymity as a business model. I believe there's companies out there that see the value of this, and I believe that there's investors that will see the value of this, and I think these investors might be that one. But I'm not going to change who I am or what I believe in order to just get some money. That's not going to happen. I probably will not be a very wealthy man, but so be it. I'd rather be respected than be wealthy, because at least I can die a happy man with friends.
Exactly. I mean, there's two things to say on the back of that. One, I've lived amongst some of the most, who've had billions in their bank account, and the most miserable people in the planet. So money doesn't mean anything to me, and it doesn't mean anything to you. And I think it's the same. I have the same situation that. I mean, when I first put out the white paper for N99, or people were like, well, why are you giving all that away? You're just going to tell the competitors. And I was like, I don't care. All I want is it to be built. I'm not bothered. If someone else wants to go nick my idea, well, the world's going to be big enough for all these ideas. And I think every time I hear, I heard it all the time. People say, what, you're going to give 99% of the stuff to the people who generate? And you're like, oh, you're never going to make a business of that. Well, I will invest in you, but you must give, only 50% to the. And I'm like, it doesn't really matter. Do you know, I always think of whenever I say it, and it goes back to what we were talking before we went live. It's like the stagecoach drivers of 150 years ago saying, "Oh, you and your silly car engines, you're never going to go anywhere." And I'm like, well,
Right.
whatever, man. You're sitting there, and great, you've got it all sussed right now. You've got all the streets and everything. You can't see the future, but the future is going to
Right.
be cars.
Right.
And do you know what I love about right now is this is what I'm saying. I equate, say, you know, you're a Ferrari, and I see like DemonSaw's a Ferrari, and someone over there's a Lamborghini being built, and someone over there's building Rolls Royce, and this is what's great about it. And all the people right now that laugh at us and say, oh well, you should be doing this, you should be doing that. You think you don't really get what's coming in the future. And like you say,
Right.
Zuckerberg, if he doesn't understand it yet, should be worrying himself, because I've always
Yeah.
said the beast as it is right now may look like a huge, great, big, gnarly beast, but the tail of what we are behind it goes on forever. You know, and that's the
Right.
power. The tail behind all the little people have been forgotten about. They're the power. And like you said, the world's going to shift, I think, absolutely fundamentally in the next 5 years. And it's, you know, it's people like, and I think it's really inspiring, is that people like me and you, we're not doing it for money, we're not doing it for fame, we're not doing it for ego, we're not doing it for, we're just doing it because we know it's the right thing to do, and because it's the only logical
Right.
thing to do. Like you say, it's
Right.
logic.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Innovation and passion will always trump wealth. Always. Because one thing that they cannot control is one or two or a handful of people that are inspired for a greater good. You cannot quantify that in terms of money or power or stocks or Wall Street or investors or any of this thing. You cannot put a price on that. And especially when a person is inspired and driven by a greater good. Just to give you an example, a few weeks ago, I heard that uTorrent just recently laid off about 50 people or so. They were around 150 people. So you know uTorrent, the most popular BitTorrent app out there. They had 150 people on staff. 150 people to create uTorrent. Now, there's probably other projects they're working on, but I thought about that and I thought, 150 people to create uTorrent. Now, it's a great app. There's no question about it. They've made some very poor decisions recently with Bitcoin mining without telling us and packaging their app with other nonsense. And they're not very customer friendly, and they're not transparent and honest, and they're kind of dicks when you think about it. But their app works technically well. But here's the thing: is little old me made DemonSaw. One person made DemonSaw. What if we had 10 Eijahs out there, or 10 people that were far smarter than me working together, like what's going on with MadeSafe and the Safe Network? What if we wouldn't even need close to 150? We could trump them with 3 or 4. And the reason why is because we're inspired and we're passionate and we're motivated and we're driven by a greater good. That is really, that's a powerful concept that corporations and businesses forget about. I think they start and they know it. They start and they know it. George Lucas, I think, had the most perfect analogy a few years back when he was being interviewed. He said, and I'm paraphrasing, but he said, when I started out making Star Wars in the 70s, I was the little guy. I was Luke Skywalker. I was against all odds. It was me against the empire, all the production companies and the corporations and the movie studios, and I was the guy who didn't stand a chance. And now, he said, I've become the empire. I've become that which I fought against 30 years ago. And that's why it's so very important to continue to be inspired and continue to stay humble and continue to learn every day from community members and people who share information. I'm surrounded by people far smarter than me every day of my life, through the DemonSaw community and the MadeSafe community and people I work with at work. I learn every day and I'm constantly humbled. And that's an important aspect of growing in what we do. But George Lucas, he probably never imagined 40 years ago that he would become the Empire. Had you told him that in 1976 when he was making Star Wars, he would have thought, no way. I'm going to remain independent. I'm going to shrug off a $4.05 billion acquisition from Disney. I'm going to be the little guy forever. And things change, unfortunately. So to what you said, stay humble, stay open-minded, don't grow too fast. Surround yourself by smarter people, and never, never, never forget why we started this. Because we don't want to become that which we fought against from the beginning.
Yep, and I think that the underlining point I would put on that is like is the old Bill Hicks one, man. Don't take life too seriously. Go out there tonight and look at the stars above you and just realize that we're specks, man. You know,
Yep.
I mean, the bottom of it, that's what keeps us all humble, man. We're on a rock that's just floating through space, man. That's enough to make us all very humble.
Yeah. You know what we're missing right now is we're missing a couple pints of Guinness. That's what we're missing.
Well, those days will come, man. I mean, you did mention that you've been in Edinburgh. So, I mean, how did you find your time in Edinburgh?
Well, it's Rockstar has a big studio in Edinburgh that had a lot of people working on Grand Theft Auto, and I had the opportunity to go there for about 4 weeks, and 4 weeks became 3 months, and 3 months became almost 9 months, and it was a very organic type thing, and they said, you want to stay? It's working out really well. You've got close access to your team here. I said, I don't have a family. Why not? I'm a single guy. There's pubs everywhere. Yeah, I could go from my work seat to a pub seat drinking a Guinness in under 5 minutes. Go from code to Guinness in under 5 minutes. Literally, as you're well aware. Why would I not want to stay? That's too good to pass up. So maybe that will be my autobiography, From Code to Guinness in Under 5 Minutes. Actually, has a good ring to it.
That's got a great ring to it, man.
I like that. So we're there. I know we've already been chatting for 2 hours yet, but were there any questions that you had or that others had that you wanted to ask that maybe we forgot about? Just so we don't get any.
To be fair, there's a series of technical questions, but to be fair, I don't think this is the time or the place to go into sort of like technical code questions because I don't really know those sort of things. So I think that's maybe well, two things. I want to make this the first of many conversations because I think this is, as you said before, this is the whole essence of what we try to do. We start conversations and we carry them on. So on that one, I think the one I would like, before we wrap this sort of conversation up, where can people? I mean, we talked about DemonSaw. Where can people reach out to you on Twitter and stuff like that? Where if people want to contact you, where can they find you?
Yep. Yeah. So the best way is I'll type this in the chat.
I'll put it out on the show notes as well. But yeah.
Perfect. They can reach me on Twitter. It's at @demon_saw. So that's just, you can reach out. If you I'll add you. I mean, I pretty much add everybody as I follow everybody that follows me, so that you can send me direct messages and stuff in case you want to have a private conversation. You could also reach me. Let me type this out. Eijah at DemonSaw.com, and that's EIJAH at DemonSaw.com. There you go. Those are the two best ways to reach me. If you download DemonSaw and you start the app, you'll automatically connect to bucket1.demonbucket.com. I'm usually on chat for the small amount of time that I'm sleeping or otherwise occupied. There are a number of community members there that could answer pretty much 99.99% of your questions. It's amazing just how much they know. In fact, I don't even think they need me anymore. I think they're just setting me up for a nice early retirement, which I'm much appreciated. So they will gladly continue on the torch without me. They're probably panicking right now, but but that's pretty much the ways to contact me. So those 3 ways.
Well, a couple of things again, and particularly to the anyone listening on your DemonSaw community, man, I recommend two things. I mean, they can reach out to me, and if they watch this show notes, they can see my Twitter. But equally, get involved on the SafeNet forum, because I think there's a lot of cross collaboration, and this is how we get to forge these these connections. And I would love to connect with have these connections sort of forged and moved on, and then the other thing that's got mentioned before, as you know, I do the artwork for a band called Seeding Demons, and we've been talking about it for the last sort of 2 or 3 weeks. When I know I've been going to have this podcast was coming up, and it's something we've been talking about a lot. So where did the name DemonSaw come from? I mean, I already mentioned earlier on that it's got NSA, and I don't know if that's just me picking up, but I mean, where did the actual demons? Because that's that's what I'm saying. There's a quite a mad synergy between the fact that we both sort of like are involved in things to do with demons. So where did the name DemonSaw come from, man?
Well, that was so that the exact story is best told over a pint, but the Reader's Digest child-friendly story I can definitely tell. DemonSaw was born in Scotland. DemonSaw was born in Edinburgh, where I started having these ideas. We stopped working 80-hour weeks basically for GTA, and I started to have a little bit of free time, and I started thinking about what am I going to do to occupy all my free time. I guess I could start dating, maybe have children, get married, but that sounds expensive. I don't really want to spend money. So what can I do that doesn't involve losing lots of money or signing into contracts with strangers? And so I thought, well, I can write an app. So I was thinking about the name of the next great secure and anonymous private information sharing app. And I grew up in the church, and I always was told that demons are bad. And if you remember the beginning of this podcast, we talked about how a lot of DemonSaw started with anger and just aggression, and the idea that's where the initial energies came from. Is that I was tired of the NSA, I was tired of the UK monitoring us, I was tired of losing our privacy. So I got angry and I got motivated for change, and there's some dark energy associated with this. So the word demon kind of came out of that, as when I grew up in the church, demons were perceived as bad. So I thought I could harness this dark energy, this very demonic, negative energy, and I thought I could rechannel it. So it started with the demon, and I knew that I wanted to give a clear and concise message to governments and corporations that were violating our rights as citizens and our privacy. And I thought, what better way to tell the governments around the world how I felt than to put the NSA right in the middle of my application's name. Well, I mean, perhaps a lapse of judgment on my part, perhaps a moment of brilliance. I don't know which it was, maybe a little bit of both. But I thought, so I started looking for words that began with demon and ended with anything else that had the word saw in it. And or NSA in it. And so I found, well, demon ends with an N, so what words begin with SA? I kind of went over mentally different words, and I came up with saw, and I thought, that's kind of cool, because it rolls off the tongue. DemonSaw, it kind of has a different meaning, like, a demon saw, like I saw the demon, but it also allows me to channel the energy, because when we see something, we channel our vision. We direct our viewport in a certain direction, and so we channel our attention, and so the channeling of the dark energy also came out. But at the same time, subconsciously, I was remembering a Bible verse from growing up. Now, when I was growing up, I read the entire Bible, cover to cover. So, every word in the Holy Bible, every word. And one of the passages I remembered was Mark 5, 6 through 9. Now, the passage begins with, and when the man with the demon saw Jesus. There's this man who approaches Jesus one day, and he's demon-possessed. And it begins, and when the man with the demon saw Jesus, he became afraid, and he basically bowed down before Jesus, and he's like, "Oh Lord, save me. Save me from these demons." And so Jesus starts having this conversation with this man who's seriously has some problems, and he's like, "Let me talk to the demons." So So Jesus goes from having a conversation with the man to having a conversation from the demons. And then near verse 9, the demons are pleading with him. They're like, please don't don't cast us out of this man. It's warm and cozy inside this man. It's cold outside. Don't throw us out in the cold. We don't have any blankets. This is a little bit of a paraphrase, but you get the idea. Mm-hmm. And so Jesus is like, okay, I'll take pity on the demons. Now, I've never quite understood, why would Jesus take pity on demons? I still don't know. But he did, and the demon said, instead, cast us out in that herd of swine. So cast us out in that large number of pigs that is the livelihood of this poor innocent farmer over here who, clearly he needs these pigs to sustain his family and make a living. So cast us into this guy's property and let us run off the cliff to our death. And so Jesus says, okay, I'll cast you out there in this guy's property, run off the cliff, the pigs die. But before that happens, the demons say, our name is Legion, for we are many. Mm-hmm. So Mark 5, 6 through 9 is the entire experience of a man who's demonically possessed, comes before pleading with Jesus for help. And Jesus, instead of just ignoring him, has a conversation, spends time with the guy, understands his problem, and not only pities and gives mercy to the man, but he gives mercy to the demons, and then casts them out into somebody else's property and pisses off the farmer and gets run out of the country because the farmer gets mad. Never understood that last part. Nonetheless, it happened. So I think somewhere deep inside of me, this verse resurfaced when I was thinking about demons and thinking about my application and what to name it. And I think with the man with the demons saw Jesus, I think was somewhere in the back of my mind and came up when I was looking for words that contained NSA. But what better way to launch a private and secure and anonymous information sharing application than to have the word NSA right in the middle of the title as a big fuck you to governments and corporations around the world who would dare violate our personal rights to privacy and anonymity and security. They need to understand that we are coming for them. We are coming for the corporations. We are coming for the governments who've continued down this path. We will change the world, and we will make things right. And that, my friend, is the meaning behind the word DemonSaw and also my motivation.
Well, that to me is the perfect Zen way to finish any podcast, man.
Well, in closing, I want to thank a few people. First of all, I just want to remind everyone that we have DemonSaw on Windows, Linux, OS 10 for Mac. We also have it on Raspberry Pi. In fact, we just launched the Mac version last week. We've been putting it off for a few weeks, so I apologize to the Mac community. I finally got around to building it. But I want to thank not only you and Rich, but the Life is People podcast team, as well as the SafeNet and the Made Safe Network. I want to thank all you guys for your hospitality, bringing me here, and I also want to thank all of my friends and family, my hackers and programmer friends, the DemonSaw community members, everybody that not only inspires me, but motivates me to continue with this quest. Some days are tough. Some days it's really, really tough to know you're going to lack sleep and get up in the morning early or stay up late at night, but you're inspiring me to continue doing this, and I thank you very much for your support, your help, your feedback, both positive and otherwise. I'm here because of us, and so with that, I'm humble and I'm gracious, and you guys are awesome, and thank you for helping me hopefully make a better world.
No, I mean that works both ways, my man, and it's one of the things that I know we were just talking about the Sea and Demons End. One of the things that the phrases we use a lot is called slaying positive, and it's that's what you're doing, man, and it's a great inspiration. And as I said before, we do what we do, and and I want you to be aware. This is you as a human being, one to one, man. You are affecting people that you don't know. You're never going to meet. You're never going to meet the people you are changing, and you don't know. So keep slaying positive, man. Keep inspiring, and I look forward to the day. Well, two things. One, I look forward to the day that we don't have to have these conversations with these stupid things on our ears. That's number one.
Is that an invitation to go to Glasgow? Because I
Well,
will gladly have a pint with you.
I was just about to say, man. I'm looking forward to the day when we can actually have this. You know, we can sit down in a pub together and have a real conversation without any, without this. But like I say, man, we're definitely need to, definitely get you back on, because I think we scratched the surface tonight, and I think there's a lot more. Maybe we could do a whole podcast where we really get technical and we do all the code questions and stuff like that. And I can spend maybe 4 or 5 weeks brushing up on my code knowledge. But man, it's been an absolute honor tonight, man, and thank you for your time, because I know how precious, short your time is, and precious, your time is and stuff. So thank you very much for your time, and like I say, keep inspiring. Rich, thanks a lot for your time tonight, man. In your
thank you, Rich.
When I was able to make it, it was fascinating.
Oh, well,
I never knew people coded in their sleep. That's awesome.
We're probably not as effective in our sleep, but no sleeping, right? Maybe we're better. Well, guys, I would love to do a follow-up where we could totally get technical. Just let me know what works for you. I'm hoping to be as close to 100% on DemonSaw in the next few weeks, just so I can get 3.0 done. So I'll make myself available whenever you're available.
Yeah, man.
This has been very great. Thank you very much for your support and your time, and I like it. So thank you, gentlemen.
Well, for me in Scotland, and in New York and New Mexico, it's life is people.
Thank you.